You've been letting people and problems live in your mind for too long, replaying what they said, reliving what they did, worrying about situations you cannot control, and carrying conversations that ended days, months, or even years ago. But if thinking about these things could solve them, why do you still feel restless? Why does one person enter your thoughts and suddenly steal your peace? Why does one small problem grow larger every time you replay it? The truth is, people do not need to be near you to control your emotions, and problems do not need to be happening now to keep hurting you. They only need a permanent place inside your mind. Buddhist wisdom teaches that suffering grows when the mind holds on, when it keeps feeding anger, fear, regret, and resentment, and when it refuses to let the past remain in the past. For centuries, Buddhist teachers have shown that peace does not come from controlling other people, changing what happened, or removing every problem from life. It comes from changing the way your mind responds. It is the kind of awareness that helps you notice a painful thought without following it, remember an insult without becoming angry again, and face a problem without allowing it to take over your whole inner world. As you listen to these lessons, something will begin to change. Your mind will slow down. The people who disturbed your peace will start losing their power. The problems you cannot control will begin to feel lighter, and you will finally understand that letting go does not mean pretending nothing happened. It means refusing to let what happened continue living inside you. This is not just another message about positive thinking. This is a path to stop letting people and problems live in your mind. Are you ready? Let's begin. And this is where the real work begins, because the people and problems that stay longest in your mind are often not the ones that hurt you the most. They are the ones connected to feelings you have never clearly faced. A painful memory can remain inside you for years when you only describe the event but never name what it awakened in you. You may say, "They spoke badly to me," but beneath those words there may be shame. You may say, "They left me," but beneath that loss there may be rejection. You may say, "They betrayed me," but beneath the betrayal there may be the fear that you were never truly valued. The mind keeps returning to the person because it is still trying to understand the wound. This is why some experiences seem impossible to release. You think you are holding on to a person, but you may actually be holding on to a feeling that has never been understood. The face of the person becomes a doorway. Each time the memory appears, the same hidden emotion enters through it. You believe the problem is their voice, their behavior, or their absence, yet the deeper problem is what their actions made you believe about yourself. This does not mean anger is false. It means anger may not be the whole truth. When you stop at anger, the deeper wound remains untouched. You may tell yourself that you are furious because someone insulted you, yet what truly hurts is that their words made you question your worth. You may believe you are angry because someone ignored you, but the deeper pain may be the feeling that you do not matter. Until that hidden meaning is recognized, the mind keeps returning to the event as if there is still something to solve. The mind does not like unfinished emotional experiences. It circles around them, searching for an answer. It replays the scene, changes the words, creates new endings, and asks the same questions. Why did they do that? Why did I not respond differently? Why did I allow it? Why did they choose someone else? Why was I not enough? These questions may look like a search for facts, but they are often a search for emotional safety. You may not need another explanation from the person. You may need to understand what their action touched inside you. That is a very different kind of answer. Suppose someone laughed at you in front of others. For days, you keep remembering their face and hearing the laughter. You may say that you are angry because they were rude, but when you sit quietly, you may notice that the strongest feeling is humiliation. You did not only dislike what they did, you felt exposed, you felt small, you feared that everyone saw you as weak. Once you name humiliation, the experience becomes clearer. The memory is no longer a dark cloud. It becomes a specific wound that can be met with care. This is one reason people can remain in your mind even after you have removed them from your life. The outer relationship may be over, but the inner meaning remains active. You may have blocked their number, stopped seeing them, and told everyone you are finished, yet your mind still gives them attention each day. Physical distance does not automatically create emotional distance. The mind releases through understanding, not only through separation. Buddhist practice asks you to observe your experience without running from it and without becoming lost inside it. This means learning to say, "Fear is here," instead of, "I am weak." It means saying, "Shame is present," instead of, "There is something wrong with me." It means recognizing, "I feel rejected," instead of turning that feeling into the belief, "I am unlovable." This small change in language creates space. The emotion is still real, but it is no longer your entire identity. You become the one who notices the feeling, not the feeling itself. You can hold it in awareness without allowing it to define you. There is a difference between saying, "I am angry," and saying, "Anger is moving through me." The first statement can make anger feel permanent. The second reminds you that emotions arise, change, and pass. Buddhism teaches that everything conditioned is temporary. Feelings are no exception. They may be strong, but they are not fixed. They visit, they stay for a time, and they leave when they are no longer fed. Naming an emotion does not make you dramatic. It makes you honest. Many people were taught to hide what they feel. They learned to call sadness weakness, fear cowardice, and hurt oversensitivity. They became skilled at explaining events while remaining strangers to their own inner life. They can tell you exactly what someone did, but they cannot tell you what it awakened inside them. When emotions remain unnamed, they often control behavior from the shadows. Unnamed rejection may make you chase approval. Unnamed shame may make you attack anyone who corrects you. Unnamed fear may make you control the people you love. Unnamed grief may make you emotionally distant. Unnamed powerlessness may make you obsessed with winning every argument. The feeling does not disappear because you refuse to name it. It simply finds another way to speak. Sometimes it speaks through overthinking, sometimes through tension in the body, sometimes through sudden irritation, sometimes through the need to prove yourself, sometimes through sleep that never feels restful, sometimes through a strong reaction to a small event. The present situation may be minor, but it touches an older wound that is still waiting to be recognized. You may wonder why one careless comment ruins your whole day. The comment may not be the true cause. It may have touched a place where you already feel inadequate. You may wonder why being left out of one gathering feels unbearable. The gathering may have awakened an old fear of being unwanted. You may wonder why someone disagreeing with you feels like disrespect. Perhaps your deeper wound is the fear of not being heard. Curiosity softens the inner struggle. Instead of asking, "Why am I like this?" you can ask, "What is this feeling trying to show me?" Instead of criticizing yourself for thinking about someone again, ask, "What part of this experience still feels unfinished?" Instead of saying, "I should be over it," ask, "What have I not yet allowed myself to feel?" The phrase, "I should be over it," often creates more pain. It adds shame to the original wound. Now you are not only hurt, you are judging yourself for being hurt. You begin fighting your own mind. Yet healing does not happen because you order yourself to move on. It happens when you understand what is being held and why. Buddhist compassion begins with allowing experience to be seen clearly. Compassion is not pity. It is the refusal to meet pain with cruelty. When you discover that you feel rejected, you do not mock yourself for needing love. When you recognize humiliation, you do not call yourself weak. When you find fear, you do not demand that it disappear immediately. You meet the feeling as you would meet a frightened child, with patience, steadiness, and care. You might quietly say, "This hurt because I wanted to be respected," or "This is painful because I trusted them," or "I am afraid because I do not know what happens next." These sentences are simple, but they cut through confusion. They tell the truth without creating a larger story. A larger story sounds like, "Nobody respects me," "People always leave," or "Nothing ever works for me." These statements turn one wound into a permanent identity. They take a specific pain and spread it across your whole life. Clear naming does the opposite. It narrows the experience. It says, "This person's action made me feel dismissed." That is painful, but it is not the same as saying your entire life proves you are unworthy. The mind often prefers a dramatic story because certainty feels safer than confusion. Even a painful belief can feel stable. If you decide that everyone is selfish, you no longer have to face the uncertainty of trust. If you decide that you are not lovable, every rejection seems explained. If you decide that your life is unfair, every disappointment joins the same story. But a familiar story is not always the truth. Sometimes it is only the mind's attempt to protect you from feeling vulnerable again. This is why awareness requires courage. It is easier to blame someone forever than to admit that their rejection awakened your fear of being alone. It is easier to call them evil than to recognize that you are grieving what you hoped the relationship would become. It is easier to replay an argument than to admit you felt powerless and did not know how to defend yourself. Naming the wound is not the same as blaming yourself. Their behavior may still have been wrong. Their words may still have been cruel. Their choice may still have caused real harm. Buddhism does not ask you to deny what happened or excuse people who mistreated you. It asks you to see the whole experience clearly so that their actions do not continue ruling your inner life. You can say, "What they did was harmful, and what I'm carrying is shame." Both can be true. You can set a boundary and still examine your feelings. You can leave a relationship and still learn from the wound. You can hold someone responsible without making them the permanent owner of your peace. The goal is not to turn every painful event into a lesson too quickly. Sometimes people use spiritual ideas to escape real emotion. They say, "Everything happens for a reason," before they have allowed themselves to grieve. They say, "I forgive," while anger is still burning beneath the words. They say, "I have let go," but secretly hope the other person suffers. True release cannot be forced through beautiful language. The mind knows when the wound has only been covered. Before letting go, you may need to sit beside the truth. You may need to admit, "I wanted them to choose me." You may need to say, "I feel foolish for trusting them." You may need to recognize, "I am afraid I will never receive the apology I deserve." These truths may be uncomfortable, but they are doors. Once opened, they allow the trapped emotion to move. A helpful practice is to separate the event from its meaning. First ask, "What happened?" Describe only what could be seen or heard. Perhaps someone cancelled plans without explanation. Perhaps a friend stopped calling. Perhaps a family member criticized you in front of others. Keep the description simple. Then ask, "What did I feel?" Do not rush. The first answer may be anger, but stay curious. Was there sadness beneath it? Fear, shame, rejection, jealousy, helplessness, disappointment? Then ask, "What did I make this mean about me?" This question often reveals the deepest attachment. You may have made their silence mean you are forgettable. You may have made their criticism mean you are a failure. You may have made their betrayal mean your judgment cannot be trusted. Finally ask, is that meaning completely true? Not, does it feel true? Feelings can be powerful without being accurate. Someone failing to value you does not prove that you have no value. Someone leaving does not prove that everyone will leave. Someone deceiving you does not mean you are foolish forever. It means you trusted in a situation where trust was broken. This careful examination is a form of mental freedom. You begin to remove the person from the center of the story. The focus shifts from what they did to what you are now understanding. You stop waiting for them to repair your inner world. You start becoming responsible for the meaning you continue to carry. Responsibility here does not mean fault. It means recognizing where your power lives. You may not control the past, but you can question the belief created by it. You may not receive an apology, but you can stop treating their behavior as proof of your worth. You may not understand their motives, but you can understand your own pain. This is how the mind stops renting space to old people and problems. You do not throw the memory out by force. You remove the hidden agreement that keeps it alive. The agreement may be, I cannot be at peace until they admit they were wrong. It may be, I cannot move on until I understand why. It may be, I must keep remembering so I never become vulnerable again. These agreements often feel protective. You believe the memory keeps you safe. You think replaying the event will prevent it from happening again. But wisdom is different from constant fear. Wisdom remembers the lesson without reopening the wound every day. It keeps the boundary without carrying the bitterness. It becomes more aware without becoming permanently suspicious. A scar can teach you without bleeding forever. When the exact feeling is named, you can choose the right response. Fear may need reassurance and preparation. Grief may need time and expression. Shame may need compassion and a more truthful view of yourself. Anger may need a boundary. Powerlessness may need one small action. Confusion may need patience rather than another hour of mental debate. Without clear naming, you may use the wrong medicine. You may try to solve sadness with revenge. You may answer fear with control. You may cover shame with pride. You may treat loneliness by returning to someone who repeatedly harms you. You may seek an explanation when what you truly need is acceptance. This is why awareness is practical. It does not only help you feel better, it helps you act wisely. When you know you feel rejected, you can resist begging for attention from someone who has chosen distance. When you know you feel humiliated, you can care for your dignity without attacking the person. When you know you feel powerless, you can focus on what remains within your control. When you know you are grieving, you can stop expecting anger to heal you. The person begins to lose control over your mind because you no longer need them to explain your pain. You have found the wound beneath their name. This does not happen once. The mind may return to the story tomorrow. That does not mean the practice failed. Each return is another chance to see clearly. You can pause and say, this memory is bringing back the fear of being disrespected. That sentence is more useful than entering the entire argument again. You do not need to investigate every thought for hours. A few honest words may be enough. I feel left behind. I feel unseen. I am afraid. I am disappointed. I wanted fairness. I miss what I believed we had. When the truth is simple, the mind no longer needs endless noise. Then breathe and allow the feeling to be present without feeding it a new story. Notice where it appears in the body. Perhaps the chest feels tight, the throat feels heavy, or the stomach feels restless. Stay with the physical sensation for a few moments. Do not turn it into a prediction. Do not tell yourself it will last forever. Let it be a changing experience. Over time, the memory may still exist, but it will no longer command the same reaction. You may remember the person without losing the rest of your day. You may think about the problem without creating 10 imaginary disasters. You may acknowledge what happened without feeling pulled back into it. That is not forgetting. That is freedom. You are no longer asking the mind to erase the past. You are teaching it that the past is not happening now. You are no longer using one person's behavior to measure your worth. You are no longer giving a vague wound unlimited space. The next time someone or something keeps returning to your thoughts, do not begin by asking how to get rid of it. Ask what feeling is asking to be recognized. Listen beneath the anger, beneath the blame, and beneath the repeated story. There may be a simple truth waiting there. Perhaps you wanted respect. Perhaps you needed safety. Perhaps you hoped to be chosen. Perhaps you feared losing control. Perhaps you are mourning something that never became what you believed it could be. Name it gently. Hold it honestly. Do not make it your identity. The moment the wound receives a name, the person connected to it becomes smaller. They return to their proper place, outside you, in the past, as one part of your experience. They are no longer the ruler of your inner world. And as that space begins to open, you may notice something important. The mind does not only keep people alive through unnamed feelings, it also keeps them alive by replaying the same scenes, rehearsing the same arguments, and searching for a different ending to something that is already over. The wound becomes easier to understand once you give it a name, but understanding the wound is only the beginning. Even after you recognize the fear, rejection, shame, or powerlessness beneath the memory, the mind may still return to the same scene. It may replay the argument, rebuild the conversation, and search for the perfect words you wish you had spoken. This is where another hidden attachment begins. Some memories do not stay because they are unclear. They stay because the mind keeps performing them. You may be washing dishes, lying in bed, walking to work, or sitting quietly when the scene suddenly returns. You hear the person's voice again. You remember the exact look on their face. Then your mind changes the story. This time you answer with confidence. This time you expose their lies. This time everyone understands that you were right. For a few moments, the new version gives you a sense of power. But when the imagined conversation ends, the real event remains unchanged and the pain returns. This habit can feel useful because it resembles preparation. You tell yourself that you are only thinking about what happened so you can learn from it. You believe you are getting ready in case the person confronts you again. You may even feel that replaying the event will protect you from being caught off guard in the future. But there is a difference between learning from an experience and repeatedly living inside it. Learning has an ending. You look at what happened, recognize the lesson, decide what you will do differently, and return to the present. Mental rehearsal has no natural ending. It keeps changing the words, creating new arguments, predicting new conflicts, and reopening feelings that have already been felt many times. One reflection gives you wisdom. Endless rehearsal gives the event another day of your life. The mind often rehearses because it wants to repair a moment of helplessness. Perhaps someone insulted you and you were too shocked to respond. Maybe you stayed silent because you feared making the situation worse. Perhaps you only understood the manipulation after the conversation ended. Hours later, the perfect answer came to you. Then another answer came. Soon you were having an entire argument with someone who was not even present. The mind believes that if it can win the scene afterward, it can remove the pain of losing control in the original moment. Yet an imaginary victory cannot enter the past. It may briefly improve your pride, but it cannot change what happened. The more you return to the scene, the more emotional importance you give it. You may think you are defeating the person in your mind, but you are repeatedly inviting them back inside. This is why mental rehearsal is a hidden form of attachment. Attachment is not always love, desire, or admiration. You can also become attached to anger. You can become attached to being right. You can become attached to proving that someone treated you unfairly. You can become attached to the version of the story in which they finally regret what they did. Hatred can bind two people almost as strongly as affection. The feelings are different, but the mind remains occupied in both cases. When you repeatedly argue with someone in your thoughts, you remain emotionally connected to them. Your body reacts as though the conflict is happening again. Your breathing may become shallow. Your jaw may tighten. Your heart may beat faster. Your shoulders may become tense. The person is absent, but your nervous system does not fully understand that absence. It responds to the mental picture as though danger has returned. The event may have lasted 10 minutes, but rehearsal can make it last for 10 years. Each replay strengthens the path back to the memory. The mind becomes familiar with returning there. At first, something specific may trigger it. Later, almost anything can lead you back. A similar tone of voice, a certain place, a quiet evening, or even a moment of boredom can reopen the scene. The thought becomes a habit, and the habit begins to feel automatic. This does not mean you are choosing pain on purpose. It means the mind has learned a pattern. What is repeated becomes easier to repeat. Buddhist wisdom teaches that the mind is shaped by what it continually practices. If it practices resentment, resentment becomes easier. If it practices fear, fear becomes more available. If it practices awareness, awareness becomes stronger. The direction of your inner life is influenced by the thoughts you repeatedly feed. A thought may arrive without your permission, but you do not have to prepare a meal for it. The first memory may be automatic. The long conversation that follows is often where your participation begins. You may not control the moment the person enters your mind, but you can learn to notice when you start giving them a new speech, a new trial, and a new performance. This awareness is important because many people only notice the thought after they have already spent 20 minutes inside it. By then, the emotion feels completely real again. They are no longer remembering anger. They are angry. They are no longer remembering rejection. They feel rejected in the present. The first step toward freedom is recognizing the exact moment when memory becomes rehearsal. A memory says, "This happened." Rehearsal says, "Let me enter it again, change the words, and try to control the ending." A lesson says, "Next time I will set a boundary." Rehearsal says, "Let me prove once more that I should have won." A practical plan says, "If they contact me, I will respond calmly or not respond at all." Rehearsal says, "Let me spend the next hour predicting every possible thing they might say." This distinction protects you from mistaking suffering for problem solving. Real problem solving produces something useful. It may produce a decision, a boundary, an apology, a plan, or a clear next step. Mental rehearsal often produces only greater tension. When the thinking ends, you are not more prepared. You are simply more disturbed. A helpful question is this thought leading me toward an action I can take, or is it leading me back into an experience I cannot change? If there is a useful action, take it when the time is right. If there is no action, continued rehearsal is not preparation, it is repetition. The mind may resist this truth because it fears that stopping the rehearsal means allowing the other person to win. You may feel that releasing the argument is the same as accepting their behavior. You may believe that if you stop thinking about the injustice, you are saying it did not matter. But peace is not agreement. Silence in your mind is not approval. Refusing to replay the wound does not make the wound acceptable. It simply means you will not continue punishing yourself for what someone else did. You can know that a person was wrong without holding a private court every night. You can remember what they taught you without repeating their words in your head. You can maintain a boundary without keeping anger alive to defend it. A strong boundary does not need constant hatred for support. Many people believe anger is what keeps them safe. They fear that if the anger disappears, they will become careless, trusting, or weak again. So they rehearse the painful scene to keep the warning fresh. They use emotional pain as an alarm system, but a lesson can remain after the emotional fire has cooled. You do not need to keep touching a hot surface to remember that it burns. Once you understand the danger, wisdom is enough. You can recognize the behavior, protect yourself, and make a different choice without returning to the original pain each day. This is the difference between memory and bondage. Memory carries information. Bondage carries the entire emotional event. Buddhist practice does not demand that you force the thought out of your mind. Force often creates another struggle. You say, "I must not think about this," and immediately the mind checks whether the thought is still there. The effort to remove it keeps your attention fixed on it. It is like standing at a door and repeatedly asking whether the unwanted visitor has left. Even when the visitor is quiet, you remain focused on the door. Instead of fighting the memory, notice it. You might say, "The argument is returning," or "The mind is rehearsing again." This simple observation creates a small distance. You are no longer completely inside the scene. You are watching the mind construct it. That distance is where choice begins. Do not criticize yourself for the rehearsal. Harsh judgment only adds another argument, this time against yourself. You may begin saying, "Why am I still thinking about this? What is wrong with me? I should be stronger." Now, the original person is not the only source of pain. You have joined them by attacking yourself. Awareness should be firm, but not cruel. You can recognize the pattern with honesty. This is not helping me. I am trying to change a finished moment. Then gently return to what is happening now. Feel your feet on the floor. Notice your breathing. Listen to the sounds around you. Look at the room you are actually in. The mind is in the old conversation, but the body is here. Returning to the senses reminds you that the event is not happening now. You are not trapped in that room, standing before that person, waiting for the right response. You are in the present, and the present may be safe. This practice may need to be repeated many times. The thought may return after a few minutes. That does not mean you have failed. Each time you notice and return, you weaken the habit of following it automatically. Freedom is often built through small interruptions. At first, you may spend 30 minutes rehearsing before you notice. Later, you may catch yourself after 10 minutes, then after 1 minute. Eventually, you may see the first image appear and decide not to continue the performance. The memory knocks, but you no longer open the entire house. There are times when you may need to think carefully about a difficult conversation that has not happened yet. Preparation itself is not unhealthy. You may need to decide what to say to a family member, employer, friend, or partner. The difference lies in structure and purpose. Healthy preparation is limited. You decide what matters, choose a calm message, consider your boundary, and stop. You do not try to predict every sentence the other person might speak. You do not rehearse until your body is exhausted. You accept that real conversations are uncertain. No amount of rehearsal can give you complete control over another person. This need for control is often hidden beneath overthinking. You believe that if you prepare every possible response, you will never feel powerless again. Yet life cannot be fully scripted. People may react in ways you did not expect. They may deny, attack, withdraw, or misunderstand you. Your peace cannot depend on controlling every response. A wiser form of preparation focuses on your conduct, not their reaction. You can decide, "I will speak truthfully." You can decide, "I will not insult them." You can decide, "If the conversation becomes abusive, I will leave." You can decide, "I will not explain myself endlessly." These choices belong to you. Whether they understand, apologize, or change belongs to them. When you rehearse their side of the conversation again and again, you enter territory you cannot control. You create imaginary versions of them and respond to each one. Your mind becomes crowded with people who do not exist outside your thoughts. The real person may be sleeping peacefully while you argue with 10 versions of them. There is another reason the mind rehearses. It wants recognition. In the imagined conversation, you finally say everything perfectly, and the other person understands. Their face changes. They feel ashamed. They admit that you were right. This ending gives you what the real event denied you. But this imagined recognition can become addictive. You keep returning because the fantasy offers a moment of satisfaction. Yet the satisfaction fades quickly because it does not come from reality. The mind must repeat the scene to feel it again. This is how rehearsal becomes a private form of emotional dependence. You remain dependent on an imaginary apology, an imaginary defeat, or an imaginary moment of understanding. Your peace still revolves around the other person, even though the entire meeting is happening in your mind. Buddhist wisdom invites you to release the demand that the past provide a different ending. The event happened as it happened. This may be painful to accept, especially when you were treated unfairly. Acceptance does not mean you are happy about it. It means you stop asking reality to become something it is not. The conversation ended without the perfect response. The person may never admit the truth. The apology may never come. The justice you wanted may not appear in the form you expected. These truths can hurt, but fighting them does not make them less true. When you accept that the past cannot be edited, the energy spent rewriting it becomes available for your present life. You can use that energy to rest, create, connect, work, pray, learn, or care for yourself. You can invest it in people who are actually present. Every hour spent arguing with the past is an hour that cannot be offered to the life still unfolding. Consider how much attention one person may be receiving without earning it. They may have spoken one cruel sentence, but your mind has repeated it 1,000 times. Their voice was heard once in the room, and then many more times through your own memory. At some point, the suffering is no longer coming directly from their mouth. It is coming from the recording your mind keeps playing. This realization is not meant to blame you. It is meant to show you where freedom is possible. You could not control the first words, but you can gradually stop supplying the repetitions. You may find it helpful to create a closing sentence for the rehearsal. When the scene begins, say, "There is nothing new to solve here," or "I know what happened and I know what I will do differently," or "This conversation is over, even if my mind wants another round." The sentence should not deny your feelings. It should remind you that repetition is no longer useful. Then turn toward a real action. Drink water, step outside, stretch your body, write down the lesson in one sentence, complete a small task, speak to someone trustworthy, do something that belongs to the present. The mind needs more than an order to stop. It often needs a direction to move toward. Writing can also help when the same speech keeps repeating. Put the words on paper once. Write what you wish you had said without sending it. Then read it carefully and ask, what is the real message beneath all these words? You may discover that the long argument contains one simple truth. I deserved respect. I needed honesty. I will not accept this again. I am hurt, but I am moving forward. Once the central truth is clear, you no longer need the entire performance. Be careful not to turn writing into another endless rehearsal. The purpose is to release and clarify, not to create hundreds of pages proving that you were wronged. Give the thought a container, find the lesson, and close the page. The same principle applies when speaking to friends. Sharing pain can bring support, but repeating the same story to every person can strengthen your attachment to it. Each retelling may create the same emotional reaction. You begin living from the identity of the person who was betrayed, insulted, abandoned, or defeated. There comes a time when telling the story no longer helps you process it. It only helps the story remain central. Ask yourself how you feel after repeating it. Do you feel clearer, steadier, and more able to move forward? Or do you feel newly angry, physically tense, and more interested in proving your case? The result will tell you whether the conversation is healing or rehearsing. You do not have to silence yourself. You only need to notice when expression becomes repetition without growth. The mind may also rehearse future problems that have not happened. You predict an argument, prepare for rejection, and create painful conversations before anyone has spoken. You tell yourself that expecting the worst will protect you from surprise. Yet suffering in advance does not reduce suffering later. Sometimes the feared event never occurs, and you have paid an emotional price for something that existed only in thought. If the problem does occur, the rehearsal may still not help because reality rarely follows the exact script. You suffer once in imagination and once in life. Buddhist teachings often return attention to the present because the present is the only place where wise action can happen. The past can be remembered and the future can be considered, but your life is being lived now. When thought leaves the present to gather wisdom, it can be useful. When it leaves the present to repeat pain, it becomes a burden. This does not mean the mind must always be empty. The goal is not to never remember, plan, or reflect. The goal is to stop confusing compulsive thinking with responsible attention. Responsible attention is calm enough to see clearly. Compulsive thinking feels urgent, repetitive, and emotionally consuming. It says, "One more replay, and I will finally solve this." But there is always another sentence, another possibility, and another version. The finish line keeps moving because the real problem cannot be solved inside the rehearsal. What you are often seeking is not a better answer. It is relief from the feeling of powerlessness. That relief comes from returning to the power you have now. You can choose who has access to you. You can change how you respond. You can seek help. You can leave a harmful situation. You can apologize for your own mistakes. You can refuse another argument. You can learn to recognize manipulation. You can protect your time and attention. These present choices restore more power than any imaginary victory. Sometimes the wisest response is to prepare and speak. Sometimes it is to remain silent. Sometimes it is to walk away. Sometimes it is to accept that the person is committed to misunderstanding you. Mental rehearsal often assumes that the perfect sentence can change anyone, but some people are not confused by your explanation. They simply do not want to accept it. More words will not create willingness where there is none. You may spend years preparing an explanation for someone who benefits from pretending not to understand. Recognizing this can free you from the belief that your peace is hidden inside the perfect speech. Your dignity does not depend on delivering the final argument. Your truth does not become false because someone refuses to hear it. There are victories that look like silence because you no longer need to prove what you know. As the rehearsal weakens, the mind may feel strangely empty. You may have spent so much time thinking about the person that their absence creates discomfort. This can reveal how deeply the habit became part of your daily life. Do not mistake the emptiness for loss. It is space returning to you. At first, you may not know what to do with that space. Fill it carefully. Do not immediately replace one mental conflict with another. Turn towards something that nourishes attention rather than consumes it. Read something that deepens you. Sit quietly. Work with your hands. Walk without carrying the argument. Listen closely to someone who is actually speaking. Notice the ordinary world that continued while your mind was trapped in an old room. The sunlight did not stop. Your breath did not stop. Life did not stop. You were simply absent from parts of it. The purpose of Buddhist awareness is not to create a cold mind that never feels hurt. It is to create a mind that can feel without becoming imprisoned. You may still remember the argument. You may still wish you had responded differently, but the memory no longer needs to become a daily performance. You can say, "I did not know then what I know now." This is not weakness, it is truth. The person you were in that moment had limited information, limited time, and a nervous system responding under pressure. It is unfair to judge that version of yourself using the clarity you gained afterward. The perfect answer often appears later because the danger has passed and the mind has had time to think. That does not mean you failed. It means you were human. Offer your past self the understanding you wish someone else had offered you. Then carry the lesson forward. Perhaps you need to pause before responding. Perhaps you need to trust the first sign of disrespect. Perhaps you need to speak more directly. Perhaps you need to leave sooner. These are useful conclusions. Once they are learned, let the classroom close. You do not need to take the same lesson every night. The next time an old argument begins inside you, notice the invitation. The mind will offer you the familiar role, the improved speech, and the satisfying victory. Before you step onto that inner stage, pause. Ask whether this performance will change anything outside your mind. Ask whether it will bring wisdom that you do not already have. Ask how your body will feel when the scene ends. Then remind yourself, the event is over, the lesson can remain, and the performance is optional. Let the words fade without forcing them. Return to your breathing. Return to your surroundings. Return to the life that is asking for your attention now. Each time you do this, the person receives less space. The old problem loses another part of its stage. The mind learns that it does not need to create a different past in order to build a peaceful present. And when the rehearsal finally becomes quiet, you may discover that some of the pain you carried never truly belonged to you. It came from another person's fear, confusion, insecurity, or inner disorder, and you had been treating it as a judgment of your own worth. The rehearsal becomes quieter when you stop trying to rewrite what happened, but another burden may still remain. You may no longer be arguing with the person in your mind, yet you may still be carrying the meaning of their behavior. Their cruelty may have become your self-doubt. Their rejection may have become your shame. Their confusion may have become the way you now see yourself. And this raises a difficult question. How much of what you feel about yourself truly belongs to you? Sometimes the pain another person gives you did not begin with you. It began inside them long before you entered their life. A person may speak to you with contempt because contempt already fills their mind. They may try to make you feel small because your confidence reminds them of what they fear they lack. They may control you because uncertainty frightens them. They may betray you because honesty requires a level of maturity they have not developed. They may reject your kindness because receiving genuine care exposes the walls they have built around themselves. When this happens, the mind often reaches the wrong conclusion. Instead of seeing their behavior as a reflection of their inner condition, you treat it as evidence about your value. You ask, "What is wrong with me?" When the more useful question may be, "What was happening within them that made this behavior possible?" This question does not remove responsibility from the person. It places responsibility where it belongs. Buddhist wisdom teaches that actions arise from causes and conditions. Nothing appears by itself. A cruel word may arise from anger, fear, pride, ignorance, jealousy, or an old habit of domination. A selfish choice may arise from insecurity, greed, emotional immaturity, or the belief that another person's needs do not matter. Unpredictable behavior may come from a mind that has never learned to sit with discomfort. Understanding these causes does not make harmful behavior harmless. Poison remains poison even when you know where it came from. But once you understand its source, you stop drinking it as though it were a truth about you. Suppose someone constantly criticizes you. They find fault with your appearance, choices, work, personality, or progress. At first, you may defend yourself. Later, their voice begins following you even when they are absent. You look in the mirror and hear their comments. You complete something well and immediately search for what is wrong. You become afraid of making decisions because you expect judgment. Their inner disorder has now crossed the boundary into your mind. The criticism may have begun with their inability to feel secure unless someone else feels inadequate. Perhaps they were raised in an environment where love was mixed with judgment. Perhaps they learned that control is the safest way to keep people close. Perhaps your growth threatens them because it reveals their refusal to grow. Whatever the cause, their behavior belongs to their state of mind. But if you accept their judgment as your identity, you begin carrying their condition for them. This is one of the quiet ways emotional pain spreads. A person who has not faced their insecurity gives it to someone else. They create doubt in you so they can feel certain. They create shame in you so they can escape their own. They create confusion in you so no one examines their behavior too closely. You leave the interaction questioning yourself, while they leave feeling temporarily relieved. This does not always happen consciously. Some people are not planning how to transfer their pain. They are simply acting from habits they have never examined. Their wounds have become automatic ways of relating. They criticize before they feel criticized. They abandon before they can be abandoned. They lie before the truth can expose them. They attack before anyone has threatened them. Unconscious behavior can still cause conscious suffering. You do not need to call someone evil in order to recognize that they are unsafe. You do not need to understand every detail of their past before protecting yourself. Compassion does not require access. Awareness does not demand closeness. You can understand that a person acts from pain while also refusing to become the place where that pain is repeatedly released. This balance is important because people often move toward one of two extremes. They either take the behavior completely personally, or they excuse everything because the person has suffered. Taking it completely personally sounds like, "They treated me badly because I am not good enough." Excusing everything sounds like, "They had a difficult life, so I must continue accepting the harm." Neither response creates freedom. A wiser response says, "Their pain may explain the behavior, but it does not give them permission to keep hurting me." Explanation and permission are not the same thing. You can know why a dog bites and still step away from its teeth. You can understand why a fire started and still leave the burning room. In the same way, you can understand a person's fear, insecurity, or unhealed pain without remaining available for its consequences. Buddhist compassion includes wisdom. Without wisdom, compassion can become self-abandonment. You may call it patience when you are actually tolerating disrespect. You may call it forgiveness when you are afraid to set a boundary. You may call it understanding when you are carrying responsibilities that belong to someone else. Real compassion sees suffering clearly, including your own. If another person is suffering, that matters. If their behavior is causing you suffering, that also matters. Their pain does not become more important simply because they express it loudly. Your peace does not become less valuable because you are able to remain calm. Some people become skilled at making their emotions the center of every interaction. If they are angry, everyone must adjust. If they are disappointed, everyone must apologize. If they are insecure, others must become smaller. If they are afraid of losing control, everyone must surrender their freedom. Over time, you may begin organizing your life around their inner disorder. You watch your words carefully. You hide good news because they may become jealous. You avoid certain subjects because they may explode. You agree when you want to disagree. You apologize for things you did not do. You spend hours trying to prevent their next reaction. Your mind becomes a room built around someone else's instability. This is not peace, it is constant emotional management. You may feel responsible because you can often predict what will upset them, but being able to predict a reaction does not make you the cause of it. A person's inability to manage disappointment is not proof that you have done something wrong. Their anger may be real, but their interpretation may still be unfair. You are responsible for speaking with care. You are not responsible for controlling every feeling your honesty creates in another person. This distinction can be difficult when you have spent years believing that keeping everyone calm is your duty. Perhaps you learned early that safety depended on reading people's moods. You became alert to small changes in tone, expression, and movement. You could sense tension before anyone spoke. This awareness may have helped you survive difficult relationships, but it can later become a burden. You begin treating every change in another person's mood as a problem you must solve. Someone becomes quiet, and you assume you have offended them. Someone seems distant, and you begin searching through everything you said. Someone responds coldly, and you immediately question your worth. The mind has learned to place you at the center of other people's disorder, even when their feelings may have little to do with you. Pause before accepting responsibility. Ask, did I act dishonestly, cruelly, or carelessly? If the answer is yes, take responsibility and repair what you can. But if you acted with honesty and respect, do not invent guilt simply because someone disliked your boundary. Not every negative reaction is evidence of wrongdoing. A person who benefited from your lack of boundaries may call your boundaries selfish. A person who controlled you through guilt may call your independence disrespectful. A person who enjoyed your silence may call your honesty aggressive. Their description may reveal the loss of their advantage, not a flaw in your character. This is why you must examine behavior without immediately accepting labels. Someone may say that you are difficult because you asked for respect. They may say you have changed because you no longer accept the same treatment. They may say you are cold because you stopped explaining yourself endlessly. They may say you are ungrateful because you refused a favor that came with hidden demands. Words can be used to describe reality, but they can also be used to control it. Before allowing another person's judgment into your identity, ask what their judgment is trying to protect. Are they protecting truth, or are they protecting access to you? Are they describing your conduct, or punishing you for becoming harder to manipulate? You do not need to reject all criticism. That would become another form of blindness. Sometimes people see mistakes you cannot see. Wisdom remains open to correction, but healthy correction is usually specific, respectful, and connected to behavior. It helps you understand what happened and what can improve. Emotional control often uses vague attacks against your whole identity. It says you are selfish, useless, impossible, weak, or unlovable. It does not guide you toward growth. It places you beneath the person speaking. Learn to separate useful feedback from emotional discharge. Useful feedback may be uncomfortable, but it leaves you with clarity. Emotional discharge leaves you confused, ashamed, and desperate to prove your goodness. When someone is releasing their disorder onto you, they may contradict themselves. One day you are too quiet. The next day you talk too much. You are too independent, then too needy. You are accused of not caring, yet when you show care, it is dismissed. The rules change because the real purpose is not improvement. The purpose is to keep you uncertain. A confused person is easier to control than a clear one. If you are always questioning yourself, you are less likely to question the person harming you. You become busy defending your intentions while they avoid examining their behavior. Clarity begins when you stop using their reactions as the only measure of reality. Look at patterns. Does this person often misunderstand everyone or only you? Do they accept responsibility when calm, Can they apologize without turning the apology into another accusation? Do they respect your limits or punish you for having them? Do conversations lead to understanding, or do they always leave you feeling smaller? Patterns reveal what isolated words can hide. Anyone can behave badly once. People become tired, afraid, stressed, or careless. A single mistake does not define an entire person. What matters is what follows. Do they recognize the harm? Do they listen? Do they make a sincere effort to change? Or do they deny, blame, and repeat? Accountability is not proven by regretful words alone. It is shown through changed behavior. Some people apologize because they fear losing access, not because they understand the pain they caused. They say the right words, wait for the tension to pass, and return to the same pattern. You may keep forgiving because each apology awakens hope. Hope can become another way of carrying someone else's disorder. You focus on who they could become rather than who they repeatedly choose to be. You remember their kind moments and use them to explain away their cruelty. You tell yourself that the good version is the real person and the harmful version is only their pain. But both versions belong to them. A person's potential cannot protect you from their present behavior. You may believe they are capable of change, but you do not have to remain close while waiting for it. Change is their work. Your task is to respond to what is actually happening. This can feel harsh when you care deeply. You may want to rescue them from the fear, shame, or insecurity beneath their actions. You may believe that enough love will make them safe. You may become more patient, more understanding, and more available. Yet love cannot do another person's inner work for them. You can offer support, but you cannot force awareness. You can invite honesty, but you cannot make someone tell the truth. You can show compassion, but you cannot make them stop using pain as a weapon. You can create a healthy space, but you cannot make them choose health. Their mind remains their responsibility. This truth may bring sadness because it reveals the limits of your power. Sometimes holding on feels easier than accepting that you cannot save someone. As long as you are trying harder, you can believe the relationship may become what you hoped. Stepping back means facing the possibility that your effort was never the missing piece. Perhaps the person did not need more patience from you. Perhaps they needed a willingness to face themselves. That willingness cannot be borrowed. Buddhist teaching often speaks about ignorance as a cause of suffering. Ignorance does not only mean lacking information, it can mean not seeing clearly. A person may not see how their fear controls them. They may not recognize how their pride damages relationships. They may believe every painful feeling is caused by someone else. When people cannot see their own mind, they often accuse the world of creating what already lives inside them. The jealous person sees threats everywhere. The dishonest person suspects everyone of lying. The controlling person calls independence betrayal. The person who refuses accountability sees every boundary as an attack. Their mind colors what they see. If you do not understand this, you may spend years trying to prove that you are not the person they believe you are. You explain your intentions, provide evidence, show loyalty, and change your behavior. Yet the accusation remains because it was never truly created by your conduct. You cannot prove yourself out of a story another person needs in order to avoid themselves. This does not mean every accusation is false. It means you should examine it rather than absorb it automatically. Ask whether the claim matches your actions. Ask trusted people who can be honest without being cruel. Look at your behavior across different relationships. If one person says you are uncaring while many others experience you as thoughtful, consider whether the accusation is connected to a demand you refused. If several people independently raise the same concern, greater self-examination may be needed. Wisdom does not blindly blame others. It searches for truth without surrendering dignity. When you discover that some part of the criticism is valid, take responsibility without adopting shame. You may have made a mistake. You may need to apologize. You may need to change a habit. But a mistake is something you did, not the total meaning of who you are. A healthy mind can admit wrongdoing without becoming worthless. This protects you from another form of emotional transfer. Some people do not merely ask you to acknowledge a mistake. They ask you to carry permanent shame for it. They bring it into every disagreement, even after you have apologized and changed. The past becomes a tool that keeps you beneath them. Accountability should lead toward repair, not endless submission. You may owe an apology. You do not owe someone lifelong control over your identity. Their refusal to release your mistake may reveal their own attachment to power, resentment, or moral superiority. Again, this belongs to their state of mind. You can remain responsible for your conduct without accepting a punishment that has no end. The same principle applies to rejection. When someone does not choose you, the mind may turn their choice into a final judgment. You think, if I were more attractive, intelligent, successful, calm, or interesting, they would have stayed. Perhaps there are things you can learn from the relationship. But another person's inability or unwillingness to love you well does not reveal your complete value. People choose according to their conditioning, desires, fears, timing, and capacity. Someone may reject peace because chaos feels familiar. They may choose emotional distance because intimacy frightens them. They may prefer someone they can control. They may leave because staying would require honesty. Their choice may tell you more about what they are ready for than about what you deserve. This is difficult to accept because rejection feels personal. It enters the body like a statement. You were not enough. But that sentence is an interpretation, not an unquestionable fact. Not being chosen by one person is not the same as being unworthy of love. A closed door does not describe the entire house. When you carry someone else's rejection as your identity, you may begin trying to earn worth from future relationships. You overgive. You accept poor treatment. You hide your needs. You become whatever you think will make someone stay. Now the original person's disorder is shaping relationships they are not even part of. Healing requires returning the burden. Returning it does not mean sending an angry message or making them admit what they did. It is an inner act. You recognize their inability to value me does not belong in my identity. You recognize their fear is not my responsibility. You recognize their dishonesty is evidence of their conduct, not my foolishness. You stop carrying what was placed on you. This may feel unfamiliar because pain often becomes mixed with loyalty. You may fear that seeing the person clearly is a betrayal. This is especially common in families. You were taught to honor, forgive, obey, or remain united. You may believe that naming harmful behavior makes you disloyal, but truth is not betrayal. You can love someone and recognize that their behavior is damaging. You can feel gratitude for what they gave you and still acknowledge what they took from you. You can remember their suffering without denying your own. Human beings are complex. A person may have protected you in one season and harmed you in another. They may be generous in public and cruel in private. They may love you according to their capacity while still lacking the capacity to love you safely. Seeing the whole person prevents both hatred and denial. You do not have to turn them into a monster to justify your boundary. You only need to admit that the relationship, as it currently exists, costs too much of your peace. A boundary is not a judgment of someone's soul. It is a decision about what behavior can enter your life. You can say, I will speak with you when we are both calm. You can say, I will not remain in a conversation where I am being insulted. You can say, "I care about you, but I cannot keep solving problems you refuse to address." You can reduce contact, stop sharing personal information, or end access completely when necessary. The purpose of a boundary is not to control the other person. It is to guide your own participation. You cannot use a boundary to force someone to change. You can only decide what you will do when the behavior continues. A threat says, "You must become different." A boundary says, "If this continues, I will step away." One tries to manage their mind, the other protects yours. They may react badly. People who benefited from your lack of boundaries rarely celebrate your growth. Their anger does not prove the boundary is wrong. It may prove that the old arrangement worked well for them. Your task is to remain aware of your own conduct. Do not use boundaries as revenge. Do not insult, humiliate, or punish. Speak as clearly as the situation allows, then follow through. Calm action protects you from becoming what hurt you. It is easy to absorb another person's anger and return it in the same form. They shout, so you shout louder. They insult, so you search for the deepest wound you can use against them. For a moment, retaliation may feel powerful, but afterward, their disorder has shaped your conduct. Buddhist wisdom asks you to guard the quality of your own mind. This does not mean remaining passive during abuse or danger. It means responding in a way that protects life, dignity, and clarity without allowing hatred to become your master. You may need to leave quickly, seek support, report harmful conduct, or create firm distance. Strength can be decisive without becoming cruel. Your peace is not protected only by what you avoid. It is also protected by who you refuse to become. When you hold someone accountable, focus on behavior and consequences. You do not need to diagnose their entire personality. You may never know the full cause of their actions. It is enough to say, "This behavior is harmful, and I will not continue participating in it." The need to understand everything can become another trap. You search their childhood, relationships, fears, and motives, hoping that complete understanding will bring peace. But sometimes you already know enough. You know the pattern hurts you. You know they refuse responsibility. You know your mind becomes less peaceful around them. That information may be sufficient. Understanding causes can create compassion, but endless analysis can keep the person living in your thoughts. The goal is not to become the historian of their disorder. It is to stop turning their disorder into your identity. You can release the need to solve them. Let them remain responsible for the parts of themselves they refuse to examine. Let consequences teach what your explanations could not. Let distance reveal what constant access allowed them to ignore. Your withdrawal may not change them. It does not need to. The purpose is to stop abandoning yourself. As you return their burden, pay attention to the beliefs they left behind. Perhaps you now believe that your needs are too much. Perhaps you expect kindness to be followed by punishment. Perhaps you distrust calm relationships because chaos feels more familiar. These beliefs may have been learned, but they are not permanent. You can begin replacing them through new experience. Spend time with people who respect a no without punishing you. Notice relationships where disagreement does not become humiliation. Allow yourself to receive care without immediately searching for a hidden cost. A peaceful relationship may feel strange at first. The nervous system can mistake familiarity for safety. If you are used to unpredictability, calmness may feel empty. If you are used to earning affection, freely given kindness may feel suspicious. Do not rush back to chaos simply because it feels familiar. Learn the texture of safety. Safety does not require you to constantly prove your worth. It does not make you afraid of ordinary mistakes. It does not demand that you abandon your identity to keep the connection. Safe people can still disappoint you. They may misunderstand, become frustrated, or need space. The difference is that conflict does not erase respect. They can return, listen, repair, and take responsibility. They bring their emotions to the relationship without placing full responsibility for those emotions on you. You must learn to do the same. Protecting your peace does not mean making other people responsible for every uncomfortable feeling you experience. Your wounds may also affect how you see others. You may become suspicious, defensive, distant, or controlling. The lesson must move in both directions. Ask yourself, am I giving someone else a burden that belongs to my past? Perhaps a new friend is paying for an old betrayal. Perhaps a caring partner is being judged through the behavior of someone who hurt you. Perhaps your fear of abandonment makes ordinary independence look like rejection. The goal is not only to return what does not belong to you. It is also to stop handing your unexamined pain to others. This is how suffering stops spreading. You examine your reactions. You apologize when your fear becomes unfair behavior. You seek support when the wound is larger than you can carry alone. You practice speaking from the present rather than accusing someone for what another person did. You become responsible for your mind without taking responsibility for everyone else's. That balance is freedom. You do not become cold. You become clear. You can care without absorbing. You can listen without becoming the container for endless blame. You can help without becoming responsible for another adult's choices. When someone arrives with anger, you do not automatically turn it into shame. When they arrive with jealousy, you do not make yourself smaller. When they arrive with confusion, you do not abandon your own perception. You observe what is theirs, what is yours, and what the moment requires. Sometimes the moment requires compassion. Sometimes it requires correction. Sometimes it requires silence. Sometimes it requires distance. The response changes, but the inner principle remains. Another person's state of mind does not determine your worth. Their cruelty cannot reduce the value of your humanity. Their inability to appreciate you cannot erase your gifts. Their dishonesty cannot turn your sincerity into foolishness. Their abandonment cannot prove that you are unlovable. They acted from the mind they had cultivated. You now have the responsibility to cultivate your own. Do not build your inner world from the material they threw at you. Do not make a home from their insults, accusations, or instability. Examine what entered. Keep any lesson that is true, and release the poison that is not. You may remember their behavior without carrying their condition. That is the deeper freedom. The past remains part of your experience, but it no longer decides how you speak to yourself. You understand that someone can mistreat a valuable person. Someone can reject what is good because they do not know how to receive it. Someone can misunderstand you because clear understanding would demand change from them. Their failure to see you clearly does not make you invisible. As this truth settles into the mind, the burden begins to move. You stop asking what you must become to make them treat you well. You begin asking what conduct protects your integrity now. Perhaps you need a stronger boundary. Perhaps you need to stop defending yourself to someone committed to misunderstanding you. Perhaps you need to grieve the person you hoped they would become. Whatever the next step is, let it come from clarity rather than revenge. Return their fear to them. Return their jealousy. Return their shame, dishonesty, and confusion. Not with hatred, but with the quiet recognition that these things were never yours to carry. Keep only your responsibility, your choices, your words, your boundaries, and the state of mind you practice each day. And as you stop carrying another person's inner disorder, you may notice one final thread still connecting you to them. Somewhere beneath the anger and disappointment, you may still be waiting for them to understand you, admit what they did, and finally see the truth. That desire can appear harmless, but it may be the very door that keeps them living in your mind. The burden of another person's disorder begins to leave when you stop treating their behavior as proof of your worth. Yet one quiet attachment may still remain. You may have returned their anger, shame, jealousy, and confusion to where they belong, but part of you may still be standing at an open door, waiting for them to come back with understanding. Sometimes the hardest person to release is not the person you still love. It is the person you still want to hear say, "Now I understand what I did to you." You may believe that one honest conversation would finally settle everything. You picture them listening without interrupting. You see their face change as they realize how deeply their actions affected you. You hear them admit that you were not exaggerating, that your pain was real, and that they were wrong. In that imagined moment, something inside you relaxes. You finally feel seen. Then the scene ends, and you return to a reality in which they still deny, avoid, blame, or remain silent. This is how the desire to be understood keeps the door open. The relationship may be over, but your peace is still waiting for the other person to become aware. You are no longer asking them to return to your life. You are asking them to return to the past and look at it honestly. That request may feel reasonable. Human beings naturally want their experience to be recognized. When someone harms you and then denies the harm, the pain becomes heavier. You are left carrying both the wound and the argument over whether the wound exists. You may begin gathering evidence. You remember their exact words. You organize the order of events. You think of witnesses who would support you. You prepare explanations that are clearer, calmer, and harder to dismiss. Somewhere inside, you believe that if you present the truth perfectly, they will finally accept it. But truth does not always fail because it was poorly explained. Sometimes it is rejected because accepting it would cost the other person too much. Understanding you may require them to question the story they tell about themselves. They may see themselves as kind, fair, loyal, or innocent. If they fully recognize your pain, they may also have to recognize their cruelty, selfishness, dishonesty, or failure. That awareness may create shame they are unwilling to face, so instead of changing their self-image, they change the story. They say you are too sensitive. They claim you misunderstood. They focus on the tone you used when confronting them. They remind you of your past mistakes. They insist that their intention was good, as though good intention erases harmful impact. They may even behave as if they are the injured person because your honesty made them uncomfortable. The conversation moves away from what they did and becomes a trial of how you reacted. This can leave you feeling trapped. You know what happened, yet the person speaks with such certainty that you begin questioning your own memory. You wonder whether you explained it badly. You think that perhaps one more conversation would help. So you try again. You choose softer words. You remove anything that might sound accusing. You acknowledge their feelings before mentioning your own. You make your pain smaller so they will not feel threatened by it. You speak carefully, hoping they will meet you somewhere in the middle, but they may use your gentleness as another opportunity to avoid responsibility. The problem is not always a lack of communication. Sometimes the problem is a lack of willingness. A person cannot understand what they are committed to denying. Buddhist wisdom teaches that suffering often grows from attachment. Attachment is not only holding on to people or possessions. It can also mean holding on to a required outcome. You decide that peace can only arrive after the other person understands. Your freedom becomes tied to a condition you cannot control. The condition sounds simple. I need them to see the truth. But beneath it may be another belief. If they do not recognize my pain, perhaps my pain is not valid. This is where the desire becomes a prison. Your experience does not become real because another person agrees with it. Pain does not require permission from the person who caused it. A wound remains a wound even when someone refuses to look at it. If a person steps on your foot and says they did not mean to hurt you, your foot still hurts. Their intention may help explain the event, but it does not remove the effect. If they go further and insist that you are not in pain, their denial still does not change what your body knows. Emotional pain is similar. You may know that a conversation humiliated you, that a betrayal damaged your trust, or that repeated neglect made you feel alone. The person may deny the impact because they do not want to carry responsibility. Their refusal does not erase what you experienced. The mind may still argue, but they should understand. Perhaps they should. Yet peace often begins when you separate what should happen from what is happening. The world does not always deliver the response that would feel fair. Some people die without apologizing. Some relationships end without a clear conversation. Some truths are never admitted by those who worked hardest to hide them. Acceptance means seeing this reality without pretending it is acceptable. You are not saying, "It was fine." You are saying, "It happened, they may never face it, and I will not keep my life frozen while waiting." This kind of acceptance can feel like grief. You are not only grieving what happened, you are grieving the conversation you may never have, the apology that may never arrive, and the version of the person you hoped would become honest enough to recognize you. Sometimes the hardest loss is the loss of hope that someone will finally become who you needed them to be. That hope may have kept you connected for a long time. Every small sign made you believe change was coming. They showed kindness one day, and you thought awareness was beginning. They admitted one minor mistake, and you hoped the larger truth would follow. They said they missed you, and you believed missing you might lead them to understand why you left. But longing is not accountability. A person can miss your presence without understanding your pain. They can regret losing access to you without regretting the behavior that caused the loss. They can want the relationship back while still refusing the truth required to make it safe. Pay attention to what they are actually offering. Are they saying, "Come back because I have changed," or "Come back because I feel uncomfortable without you"? Are they asking what you experienced, or only explaining why they acted that way? Are they making room for your truth, or trying to return quickly to the old arrangement? Real understanding does not demand that you forget in order to prove your love. It does not rush you past the harm. It does not turn the conversation into a defense of the person who caused it. Real understanding listens. It may say, "I did not realize the full effect, but I want to understand." It may ask questions without using your answers against you. It may accept that intention and impact can be different. Most importantly, it leads to changed behavior. Words can show awareness, but patterns reveal whether awareness has taken root. If someone says they understand, yet repeats the same behavior, they may only understand that you are upset. They may not understand why their conduct must change. They may be saying what will end the difficult conversation. You do not need to keep teaching someone who refuses to learn from consequences. This can be painful for people who are naturally patient. You may believe that everyone can understand if given enough time, kindness, and explanation. You may see the wounded part beneath the person's behavior and feel responsible for helping them reach it. But another person's awakening is not a task you can complete for them. Buddhist teaching values compassion, but it also recognizes causes and conditions. A seed can grow only when the conditions support growth. You may offer truth, patience, and opportunity, but if the person protects their pride more strongly than they seek awareness, understanding may not develop. You cannot open eyes that are determined to remain closed. This does not mean people never change. They do. Some people become aware after loss, consequences, time, honest reflection, or help. But their change belongs to their path. You cannot place your peace on hold while waiting to see whether it happens. Your life must not become a waiting room for another person's maturity. Ask yourself how long you have been waiting. How many conversations have you had in your mind? How many explanations have you rewritten? How many times have you checked whether they finally see what they refused to see before? Every time you return to this hope, the door opens again. They may not be physically present, but their possible future understanding becomes a daily companion. You wonder what they think of you. You hope someone else will tell them the truth. You imagine them experiencing the same pain and finally realizing what they did. Even your desire for justice may secretly contain a desire for understanding. You want life to teach them in a way your words could not. You believe that once they experience the consequences, they will think of you and say, "Now I know." Perhaps they will, perhaps they will not. Some people experience the same lesson many times and still create a story in which everyone else is responsible. Suffering does not automatically create wisdom. It can deepen awareness, but it can also deepen bitterness, blame, and denial. Pain teaches only when a person is willing to learn. Waiting for life to force awareness into someone can keep you tied to their journey. You watch from a distance, hoping for signs that they have finally changed. Their growth remains connected to your healing. Release their journey. They may understand one day. They may never understand. Neither outcome needs to decide whether you are allowed to move forward. This can feel like surrendering the truth, but it is actually a deeper trust in it. When you know what you experienced, you no longer need endless approval. You can examine your memory honestly, acknowledge any mistakes of your own, and still stand by what is true. Inner validation does not mean assuming you are always right. It means becoming capable of listening to yourself without immediately abandoning your experience. You can ask, what happened from my point of view? What did I feel? What behavior affected me? What part did I play? What do I need now? These questions keep you grounded. They do not require the other person to agree. You may discover that you were not perfect. Perhaps you spoke harshly after being hurt. Perhaps you stayed silent too long and then exploded. Perhaps fear made you accuse them of things you could not prove. You can take responsibility for these parts without surrendering the entire truth. Two people can both make mistakes, but the existence of your mistake does not erase theirs. Some people will focus on your reaction because it helps them avoid examining the cause. If you shouted after months of being dismissed, they may discuss only the shouting. Your response may still need accountability, but a complete understanding considers the whole pattern. You can say, "I regret how I reacted, and I still know that what happened before my reaction was harmful." This balanced view protects you from becoming dependent on someone else's version of reality. The desire to be understood is especially strong when you have been misrepresented. Perhaps the person told others a false story. They left out what they did and described only your response. People who do not know the full truth may judge you. Now you are not only waiting for one person to understand. You want everyone to understand. You feel the urge to explain yourself to each person. You want to correct every false impression. You fear that silence will make the lie appear true. Sometimes clarification is necessary, especially when false claims threaten your safety, work, family, or reputation. You may need to present facts, keep records, seek support, or respond through the proper channel. But in ordinary social conflict, trying to control every opinion can consume your life. People often believe the story that matches what they already want to think. Some will listen fairly, others will prefer gossip, simplicity, or loyalty to the person they know better. You may explain everything and still remain misunderstood. At some point, you must choose between living truthfully and being perfectly understood. You cannot always have both. A life built around proving yourself becomes a life controlled by the audience. You begin speaking, dressing, choosing, and behaving with imagined judges in mind. You do not ask, "Is this right?" You ask, "How will this look?" The mind becomes crowded with people whose opinions may never be fair. Buddhist wisdom directs attention toward intention and conduct. You cannot control every interpretation, but you can examine the quality of your own actions. Are you acting from honesty? Are you causing avoidable harm? Are you speaking with care? Are you respecting yourself and others? When your conduct is clear, misunderstanding may still hurt, but it does not have to destroy your direction. A traveler does not need every person beside the road to approve of the destination. You may still feel sadness when someone important misunderstands you. Inner freedom does not remove the human desire for connection. It simply prevents that desire from becoming complete dependence. You can say, "I wish they understood, but I do not need their understanding in order to know what I lived through." Notice the difference between wishing and requiring. A wish remains soft. It leaves room for reality. A requirement becomes a demand placed on life. When the demand is not met, the mind fights, waits, and suffers. You may wish for an apology. You may hope for recognition. But when you stop making these things conditions for peace, the door begins to close. Closing the door does not mean you will never speak to them again. It means you stop organizing your emotional life around a conversation that has not happened. If genuine understanding arrives later, you can decide what it means then. You do not need to rehearse its arrival every day. There may also be people who understand what they did, but refuse to admit it. This possibility can be difficult to accept. You assume that denial means ignorance, but sometimes denial is strategy. They may know that admitting the truth would weaken their control, damage their image, or require repair. They may understand your point perfectly and still choose to pretend that you are unclear. In such cases, further explanation gives them more material to resist. A person who says, "I do not understand," may sometimes mean, "I do not accept a version of events in which I am responsible." You cannot solve unwillingness with clearer sentences. Recognizing this saves energy. You stop measuring the quality of your explanation by their response. You realize that their denial may not be evidence that you communicated badly. There are also people whose emotional capacity is limited. They may not know how to sit with another person's pain without becoming defensive. Your hurt feels like an accusation, even when you speak gently. They rush to explain themselves because empathy feels like blame. Their limitation may be sad, but it is still a limitation. You can reduce expectations without turning the person into an enemy. You can accept, "This person cannot meet me at this depth." Then you decide how much access is wise. Not every relationship can hold every truth. You may need to speak about your experience with someone safer, a trusted friend, a wise elder, a counselor, or a supportive community. Being witnessed by a healthy person can help when the person who caused the pain refuses to listen. But even supportive listening should lead you back to yourself. The goal is not to find enough people to vote that you were right. It is to receive care, gain clarity, and move forward. Your peace cannot depend on winning a public case. Sometimes you will be understood by people who were not there and misunderstood by the person who was. That may feel unfair, but healing often comes from unexpected places. Let understanding reach you where it is available. Do not keep knocking on a closed door while open doors stand behind you. You may also need to offer yourself the apology you never received. This does not mean pretending the other person spoke it. It means acknowledging what you deserved. You can say, "I deserved honesty. I deserved to be heard. I deserved respect." What happened was painful, and I am sorry I abandoned my own feelings while trying to make them understand. This is not a replacement for accountability. It is a refusal to leave your healing entirely in another person's hands. You become the witness you were waiting for. Sit quietly with what you know. You may place a hand over your chest and say, "I believe the pain I experienced." Allow those words to settle without turning them into hatred. Believing yourself does not require condemning someone forever. It means you stop denying your reality to preserve their comfort. For many people, this is the deepest work. They learn to distrust their feelings, especially when someone else seemed confident. They believe the louder person, the older person, the more powerful person, or the person who can speak without emotion. But calmness does not always equal truth. A person can lie without shaking. A person can harm you and describe the event with perfect confidence. Your emotional reaction does not make your experience false. Learn to listen beneath the confusion. What did your body know when you were around them? Did you feel constantly tense? Did you prepare every sentence? Did you feel relieved when plans were cancelled? Did you become smaller, quieter, and less like yourself? The body may carry information before the mind finds words. This does not mean every uncomfortable feeling proves another person is harmful. Your old wounds can also create fear, but repeated patterns deserve attention. You can examine them carefully without waiting for the other person to confirm what you felt. When you stop demanding their agreement, a new kind of silence appears. At first, it may feel empty. You are used to preparing your case. Without the imaginary conversation, you may feel as though something important has been left unfinished. The unfinished feeling is real, but not everything receives completion through dialogue. Some experiences are completed by decision. You decide that you have explained enough. You decide that their refusal to understand no longer deserves your daily attention. You decide that your life can continue without a final meeting. Completion can come from the boundary, not the apology. It can come from leaving, not being invited back. It can come from believing what you saw, not persuading someone else to see it. There is strength in saying, "They may always tell the story differently." This sentence releases the impossible task of controlling another mind. They may remember themselves as the victim. They may tell others that you were difficult. They may never acknowledge what you gave, what you endured, or why you had to step away. Let their story belong to them. Your task is not to enter their mind and rearrange it. Your task is to live in a way that does not betray what you have learned. This is where Buddhist non-attachment becomes practical. You release your grip on the response you believe you must receive. You allow reality to be incomplete. You stop demanding that everyone involved reach the same understanding. You still value truth, but you no longer expect truth to control every person. The truth can guide your conduct even when it fails to change theirs. Each time the wish for recognition returns, notice it gently. Say, "Part of me still wants them to understand." Do not shame that part. It wanted fairness. It wanted repair. It wanted the pain to matter. Then remind it, "My pain matters even without their agreement." You may need to repeat this many times. The desire may return on anniversaries during loneliness or when a similar situation awakens the old wound. Each return is an opportunity to close the door with compassion rather than anger. You are not shutting out love. You are shutting out dependence on an unavailable response. Eventually their name may arise without the old speech following it. You may remember what happened without wondering how to explain it better. You may hear that they still misunderstand you and feel sadness without being pulled into battle. This is not indifference. It is release. You no longer need them to carry your truth because you have learned to carry it without becoming consumed by it. You no longer need them to recognize your worth because their blindness does not define what exists. You no longer need the perfect apology to begin living again. Perhaps one day they will understand. If that day arrives, their awareness will belong to that moment. You can decide whether their words are sincere, whether their behavior has changed, and whether any form of relationship is wise. But you will not spend today living inside that possibility. Today, you return to your own mind. You close the door that hope kept open, not because understanding is worthless, but because your peace is too valuable to depend entirely on someone else's awakening. And once you stop waiting for another person to confirm what you know, you begin to notice how easily the mind can make every returning thought seem urgent. A memory may appear again and again, and because it repeats, you may assume it carries an important message. But repetition does not always mean truth, value, or unfinished business. Sometimes the mind simply follows the paths it has traveled most often. Once you stop waiting for another person to understand you, the mind begins to lose one of its strongest reasons for returning to the past. But another trap can still remain. A thought may keep coming back, and because it returns so often, you begin to believe it must be important. Some thoughts feel powerful only because they are familiar. They appear in the morning, follow you through the day, and return when the room becomes quiet. You may start to think, if this keeps entering my mind, there must be something I have not solved. You treat the thought like a warning, a message, or a truth demanding your attention. Yet a thought can return many times without carrying anything new. The mind repeats what it has practiced. A path through grass becomes easier to walk each time someone uses it. At first, the ground may be thick and difficult to cross, but after many footsteps, a clear trail appears. The same thing can happen inside the mind. Each time you follow a fear, replay an insult, or predict a disaster, you strengthen the path that leads back to it. Eventually, the thought returns not because it is useful, but because the route has become familiar. This is why an old insult can suddenly appear years after it was spoken. The person may no longer be part of your life. You may know that their words were unfair. Still, the sentence comes back as clearly as if it were spoken yesterday. Its return can make you believe that it still contains power. But repetition is not proof. A song can remain in your head all day without being meaningful. A phrase can repeat because you heard it often. A fear can repeat because you have given it attention many times. Familiarity creates ease, and ease can be mistaken for truth. The mind often assumes that what appears quickly must matter deeply. This is one reason negative thoughts can feel more convincing than calm ones. You may have practiced worry for years, while peace still feels unfamiliar. The worried thought arrives with speed and force. A balanced thought may feel weak because you have not repeated it as often. The strength of a thought may reveal its history, not its accuracy. Suppose you often think, something will go wrong. You may believe this thought is intuition because it appears automatically, but perhaps the mind learned to expect trouble after living through uncertainty. It now sends the same warning into many situations, including situations that are safe. The warning feels serious because it is loud. It feels true because it is familiar. Yet loudness and truth are not the same. A smoke alarm can continue making noise even when there is no fire. The sound is real, but the danger may not be. Buddhist wisdom teaches that thoughts are events arising in the mind. They appear because of many causes: memory, habit, fear, desire, tiredness, mood, environment, and past experience. They are not always instructions. They are not always facts. They are not always signs of what will happen. A thought is something you experience. It is not automatically something you must obey. This understanding creates freedom because many people live as though every thought requires a response. A fear appears, and they begin preparing for disaster. A doubt appears, and they reconsider a good decision. An old memory appears, and they spend an hour trying to understand why it returned. The thought enters for one moment, but their reaction gives it the rest of the day. You do not need to solve every thought that enters your mind. Some thoughts are useful. They point toward a real responsibility. They remind you to prepare, repair, communicate, or protect yourself. But many thoughts are simply noise produced by an active mind. Wisdom is not the ability to stop all thoughts. It is the ability to recognize which ones deserve your energy. A recurring thought often creates urgency. It says, "Pay attention now." It may repeat the same question, "What if they betray me? What if I fail? What if I become ill? What if everyone judges me?" The repetition creates pressure, and pressure can make the question seem important. But ask what the thought has produced after all the times you have followed it. Has it given you a clear plan? Has it shown you a new fact? Has it helped you act wisely? Or has it only increased fear, confusion, and exhaustion? This question changes the way you relate to repetition. Instead of asking, "Why does this keep returning?" ask, "What happens when I follow it?" If following the thought leads to useful action, then it may deserve attention. If following it only recreates suffering, its return is not a command. It is a habit asking to be repeated. The mind can repeat fear without discovering anything. You may spend hours thinking about a future problem, believing that more thought will create certainty. But life does not always provide certainty. There may be no final answer available. The mind continues because it dislikes not knowing. It creates possible outcomes, then responds emotionally to each one. You picture losing something important. You feel grief before the loss has happened. You picture being rejected. You feel shame before anyone has rejected you. You picture becoming helpless. Your body responds as though helplessness has already arrived. None of these mental events proves the future. They prove only that the mind can create pictures and that the body can react to them. This is why Buddhist mindfulness returns attention to what is actually present, not because the future should be ignored, but because the present gives you facts. The future gives you possibilities. A possibility may deserve preparation, but it does not deserve to be treated as certainty. Suppose you have an important meeting tomorrow. A helpful thought might say, "Prepare your notes and arrive early." This leads to action. Once the preparation is complete, continuing to imagine every possible mistake does not make you more ready. The useful part has ended. What remains is anxiety repeating itself. You may still feel that stopping the thought is irresponsible. You believe worry proves that you care. You think that if you relax, you will become careless, but care and worry are not the same. Care pays attention to what can be done. Worry demands control over what cannot be guaranteed. Care prepares and then rests. Worry prepares and then continues searching for danger. A person can care deeply without allowing fear to occupy every moment. The same principle applies to relationships. You may repeatedly think, "What if they leave?" The thought may feel important because it touches a deep fear. But does following it make the relationship safer? It may lead you to check their messages, question their affection, test their loyalty, or search for signs of rejection. The fear then creates the very tension you hoped to avoid. A repeated thought can shape behavior even when it is not true. This is why you must be careful about what receives your attention. Attention is not neutral. It gives energy. A thought that is constantly examined begins to occupy a larger place in your inner world. You may not believe it completely at first, but after hearing it inside your mind hundreds of times, it begins to feel like part of your identity. "I might fail" becomes "I always fail." "They may not like me" becomes "Nobody likes me." "I made a mistake" becomes "I am a mistake." The repeated sentence becomes broader, heavier, and less accurate. The mind often moves from one event to a complete judgment because complete judgments feel simple. They remove uncertainty. Instead of examining each situation, the mind creates a rule. But simple rules can create complicated suffering. If you believe people cannot be trusted, every kind action looks suspicious. If you believe I always ruin things, every difficulty becomes proof. If you believe nothing will change, you stop noticing small progress. Repetition makes the belief easier to find, and the belief then selects what you notice. You begin seeing evidence that supports it while ignoring evidence that does not. A person who believes they are unwanted may remember every unanswered message but overlook the people who call. A person who believes failure is certain may focus on mistakes and dismiss improvement. A person who expects betrayal may notice every delay, change of tone, or private conversation. The mind becomes a collector of proof for the story it already repeats. This does not mean you should force yourself to think positively. False positivity is another form of avoidance. If something is wrong, wisdom sees it. If a relationship is harmful, peace does not require denial. If a risk is real, awareness prepares. The goal is not to replace every painful thought with a pleasant one. The goal is to see thoughts accurately. A balanced thought might say, "This could go badly, but I do not know that it will." It might say, "I have made mistakes, but I have also learned." It might say, "Some people have betrayed me, but not everyone will." Balanced thinking may feel less powerful because it does not use extreme language, but calm truth does not need to shout. Notice the words repeated thoughts often use: always, never, everyone, nobody, everything, nothing. These words can turn a limited problem into a complete reality. Someone disappoints you and the mind says, "Everyone leaves." One plan fails and it says, "Nothing works." One person criticizes you and it says, "Nobody respects me." The emotional force of the statement may hide how inaccurate it is. When a repeated thought appears, make it specific. Instead of "everything is falling apart," ask, "What exactly is difficult right now?" Instead of "nobody cares," ask, "Who has not shown care in the way I needed?" Instead of "I will never recover," ask, "What is making recovery feel difficult today?" Specific language reduces the size of the mental threat. The mind may resist this because vague fear can remain unlimited. Once you make the problem specific, you may discover that only one part of life is difficult. You may see that some things remain stable. You may recognize actions that are still possible. Clarity removes the power created by vagueness. Repeated thoughts can also appear because the mind seeks emotional familiarity. A painful thought may feel uncomfortable yet strangely known. If you have lived with self-criticism for many years, kindness toward yourself may feel unnatural. The mind returns to criticism because it understands the pattern. Familiar pain can feel safer than unfamiliar peace. Peace asks you to enter a new relationship with yourself. You may no longer know what to think when you are not attacking, predicting, or defending. Silence can feel empty, so the mind creates a problem to restore its familiar activity. You may notice this during quiet moments. Nothing urgent is happening, yet the mind searches for something to worry about. It reviews unfinished tasks, old mistakes, future dangers, and other people's opinions. The absence of a problem feels suspicious. This does not mean you secretly enjoy suffering. It means the nervous system may have learned that constant alertness is normal. Calmness feels unfamiliar, so the mind does not trust it yet. Learning peace can require patience. You may need to sit in a quiet moment without filling it with a question. Let the mind search. Notice what it brings forward. Do not follow every invitation. You can say, "The mind is looking for a problem." That sentence prevents you from immediately accepting the first concern it presents. Perhaps a memory returns. Instead of asking why it came, notice that memory is one of the mind's natural activities. A memory can appear because of a smell, sound, date, place, or mood. Its appearance does not necessarily mean that you must revisit the whole event. The mind is capable of producing content without a deeper message. A cloud appears in the sky because conditions allowed it to form. You do not ask what command the cloud is giving you. You observe it and allow it to change. Buddhist meditation often uses this kind of relationship with thoughts. Thoughts are seen, but not owned. They arise, remain briefly, and pass. The difficulty begins when you climb inside the thought and begin building a life around it. A thought says, "They may be angry with me." You then create their expression, words, future actions, and the possible ending of the relationship. Within minutes, one uncertain thought becomes a complete emotional experience. The original thought was small. The story made it heavy. You can interrupt this by returning to the first fact. "I have noticed a change in their tone. I do not yet know what it means." That may be the entire truth available now. The mind may dislike leaving the story unfinished. It prefers a painful conclusion to an uncertain space. But uncertainty is often more honest than a negative answer. You do not always know what another person thinks. You do not know every outcome. You do not know how tomorrow will unfold. Not knowing is uncomfortable, but it is not dangerous by itself. The repeated thought may say, "You must decide now." Ask whether a decision is truly needed. Some problems need immediate action. Others need more information, rest, or time. Urgency can be another habit. When the mind is anxious, everything feels as though it must be solved before you can rest. You tell yourself, "Once I understand this, I will relax." But after one issue is solved, another appears. Rest becomes a reward the mind never gives. You do not need to solve your entire life before allowing one peaceful breath. Pause and ask, "Is there anything useful I can do in this moment?" If there is, choose one action. If there is not, let the question remain unanswered for now. An unanswered question does not always require continued attention. This can be especially helpful at night. The mind often brings repeated thoughts forward when the body is tired and external distractions are gone. Problems feel larger in darkness. A conversation from years ago may suddenly seem urgent, but a tired mind is not always a clear mind. You may decide that certain thoughts will be considered during the day, when you have more energy and perspective. You can write a brief note and say, "I will look at this tomorrow." This is not avoidance. It is choosing the right condition for reflection. If the thought is important, it can wait until morning. If it disappears by morning, it may never have deserved the entire night. The mind also confuses repetition with intuition. A fearful thought appears again and again, and you begin to call it a feeling you must trust. Intuition can be valuable. It may arise from patterns you have, noticed without consciously explaining them, but fear can also imitate intuition. The difference is often found in the quality of the experience. Intuition may be quiet, clear, and connected to something specific. Fear is often loud, urgent, repetitive, and filled with many possible disasters. Intuition may guide you toward one careful action. Anxiety may demand endless checking and certainty. Do not ignore a genuine concern, but examine it. Ask, what facts support this? What pattern have I observed? What action would be reasonable? If you cannot identify anything beyond repeated fear, Treat it as a thought rather than a prophecy. A prophecy claims knowledge of what has not happened. The mind does not gain future knowledge simply by repeating a prediction. You may think, "I knew something bad would happen" after a feared event occurs, but you may forget the hundreds of fears that never came true. The mind remembers the match and ignores the misses. This strengthens the belief that worry protects you. But worry does not prevent events by predicting them. It only makes you suffer during the waiting. Preparation can reduce certain risks. Awareness can guide choices. Worrying for 10 hours does not add 10 hours of protection. Repeated self-criticism works in a similar way. You may believe that criticizing yourself prevents laziness, pride, or failure. The mind repeats your mistakes to keep you humble. But constant attack does not always produce growth. It can produce fear, avoidance, and hopelessness. A useful reflection says, "This choice caused harm. What can I learn?" Self-criticism says, "You always ruin everything." One examines behavior, the other condemns identity. The first can lead to change. The second often leads to paralysis. You may fear that if you stop repeating the mistake, you will forget the lesson. But wisdom does not require daily punishment. You can remember what needs to change without reopening shame. Write the lesson clearly. Decide on the new action. Make repair where possible. Then allow yourself to move forward. A lesson belongs in your conduct, not in an endless sentence against yourself. Some repeated thoughts are inherited. You may hear the voice of a parent, teacher, partner, or authority figure inside your mind. They may have called you weak, difficult, foolish, selfish, or incapable. After hearing the message enough times, you began repeating it without them. The person no longer needs to speak. Your mind has learned the role. This can make the thought feel like your own truth, but ask whose language it carries. Would you speak that way to someone you love? Did this belief begin after a certain relationship or period of life? Recognizing the source can help you separate habit from identity. You may discover that the voice belongs to someone who was speaking from anger, fear, control, or ignorance. Their repetition trained your mind, but training can be changed. Do not fight the old voice with another violent voice. You do not need to scream, "I am perfect." Simply answer with truth. The old thought says, "You cannot do anything right." The truthful response says, "I have made mistakes, and I have also succeeded." The old thought says, "Nobody will love you." The truthful response says, "One person's treatment does not decide every future relationship." The old thought says, "You are weak." The truthful response says, "I have survived situations that required strength." Truth weakens exaggerated repetition. It may not feel convincing at first. That is because the old thought has years of practice. Do not measure truth by immediate emotional comfort. A new way of thinking needs repetition too. But healthy repetition is different from blind affirmation. It is connected to reality. It does not deny pain or create a false image. It reminds the mind of what it repeatedly overlooks. You can practice noticing evidence of balance. When the mind says nothing is improving, identify one thing that has changed. When it says everyone rejects me, remember one person who treats you with care. When it says I cannot handle this, recall another difficult moment you moved through. You are not trying to win an argument with your mind. You are widening its view. A repeated thought often narrows attention until one concern becomes the whole world. Widening reminds you that the concern is part of life, not all of life. There may be grief and still be friendship. There may be uncertainty and still be shelter. There may be failure in one area and progress in another. There may be pain and still be moments of calm. Life holds more than one truth at a time. This wider view is one way Buddhist awareness reduces suffering. It does not erase the difficult experience, it stops the mind from turning that experience into the entire field of consciousness. You become able to say, "This thought is present, and so is my breath. Fear is present, and so is this safe room. Sadness is present, and so is the person beside me." The painful thought is no longer alone at the center. When a recurring thought appears, you can use 3 simple questions. Is this thought true? Is this thought useful now? Does following it reduce suffering or increase it? The first question examines accuracy. The second examines timing. A thought may be true but not useful at midnight. The third examines the result. A thought can contain some truth and still be followed in a harmful way. For example, you may have an unpaid bill. That is real. Thinking about it long enough to make a plan is useful. Repeating, "My life is ruined," for 3 hours increases suffering without solving the bill. The situation deserves attention, the mental punishment does not. This distinction allows you to remain responsible without becoming consumed. Buddhist practice is not an escape from practical life. It asks you to act wisely where action is possible. Pay what can be paid. Ask for help where help is needed. Speak when something must be said. Leave what is harmful. Then stop using thought to perform work that action has already completed. Once the message has been sent, you do not need to rewrite it in your mind all day. Once the appointment has been made, you do not need to predict every outcome. Once the boundary has been stated, you do not need to repeat the speech to an empty room. Let completed action be complete. You may notice that the mind returns because it wants absolute certainty that the action was correct. But many choices do not come with complete certainty. You make the wisest decision available and allow life to reveal the rest. A mature mind can live with the possibility that it may need to adjust later. It does not demand perfect knowledge before moving. Recurring thoughts often promise certainty but deliver only more questions. They say, "Think once more," yet each answer creates another possibility. At some point, wisdom must say, "I have considered enough." This is not carelessness. It is a boundary with thought. You set boundaries with people who take too much of your time. You can also set boundaries with mental habits that consume your attention. You may choose a limited period for reflection. Give the problem 10 or 20 focused minutes. Write what you know, what you do not know, and what action is possible. When the time ends, return to your day. If the mind brings the issue back, remind it that the matter has already received attention. This teaches the mind that repetition does not earn unlimited access. At first, the thought may become louder. Habits often resist when they are no longer fed. Do not interpret this as proof that the thought is important. It may simply be the old pattern demanding its usual attention. Stay patient. You are not trying to create a mind that never repeats. You are learning not to confuse repetition with authority. The thought may knock many times. You can answer once. Over time, the path weakens when it is not continually used. New pathways begin to form. The mind learns that uncertainty can be endured, that memory can arise without becoming a story, and that fear can be present without controlling action. This change may happen slowly, but slow freedom is still freedom. One day, an old thought will return, and you will notice that it feels less convincing. The words may be the same, but you no longer enter them completely. You recognize the pattern. You may even say, "I know this thought. It has visited many times, and it has never brought me anywhere useful." That recognition removes some of its mystery. The thought is no longer a powerful message from the unknown. It is a familiar mental event. You can allow it to pass without answering every question it raises. This is the deeper lesson. What returns is not always what matters most. Sometimes what matters most is quiet and easily overlooked. Your breathing, your values, your responsibilities, your relationships, and the present moment may not shout for attention. Fear shouts. Wisdom often speaks softly. If you give all your attention to whatever is loudest, you may miss what is most valuable. The mind may repeat an insult while a loving person is speaking to you. It may repeat a past failure while a new opportunity is opening. It may repeat a future disaster while the present offers safety. Attention decides which experience becomes your life. You cannot stop every thought from entering, but you can decide which thoughts receive a chair, a meal, and a permanent room. When a repeated fear appears, do not immediately ask what it means. Ask what following it will create. Will it lead to wise action or only another hour of suffering? Will it help you care for the present or pull you away from it? Will it reveal something new or repeat what you already know? These questions return authority to awareness. The thought may still appear tomorrow. Its return does not mean you failed. A path created through years of repetition may not disappear in one day. Each time you notice without following, you are no longer deepening the old path. Each time you return to the present, you are creating another way home. And as you learn that a recurring thought does not deserve unlimited attention, you may feel tempted to push it away more forcefully. You may decide that if the thought is useless, it must be removed immediately. But the struggle to force a thought out can make it even stronger, creating a new conflict inside the very mind you are trying to free. And this is where the practice becomes more subtle. Once you understand that a repeated thought does not automatically deserve your attention, you may try to remove it by force. You may tell yourself to stop thinking, stop remembering, stop feeling, and move on. But the harder you push the thought away, the more it seems to return. The mind begins fighting itself, and what started as one painful thought becomes an entire inner war. The thought is no longer the only source of suffering. Your resistance to the thought becomes another source. You may notice an old memory entering your mind and immediately say, "Not this again." Your body tightens. You become frustrated with yourself. You try to replace the memory with something positive, but part of your attention keeps checking whether it has truly disappeared. The thought may leave for a few seconds. Then it returns. Now you feel defeated because you believe its return means you have lost control. You fight harder. You criticize yourself for still being affected. The mind becomes divided into two parts. One part produces the memory, while the other part stands over it like an angry guard demanding silence. This division creates tension. The original memory may have appeared naturally, but your struggle tells the mind that the thought is dangerous. The brain begins watching for it. It checks whether the unwanted thought is coming back, yet each time it checks, it must bring the thought into awareness. You cannot check whether you are thinking about something without briefly thinking about it. This is why the command "do not think about it" often fails. The mind must first remember what it is. The effort to avoid the thought keeps the thought active. You may have experienced this when trying to sleep. You tell yourself, "I must stop thinking about tomorrow." Then the mind asks whether you have stopped thinking about tomorrow. The question brings tomorrow back. You become more alert, more frustrated, and less able to rest. The harder you demand sleep, the further sleep seems to move away. Thoughts often respond in a similar way. Force creates pressure, and pressure keeps attention fixed on the unwanted experience. Buddhist mindfulness offers a different relationship with the mind. Instead of trying to control every thought that appears, you learn to observe what is happening without immediately feeding it or fighting it. A memory appears, and you quietly recognize remembering is happening. Anger rises, and you notice anger is present. Fear enters, and you say fear has arisen. These words may seem simple, but they create an important space. You are not saying, "I am the memory." You are not saying, "I am anger." You are recognizing an experience that is moving through awareness. This does not deny the feeling. It prevents the feeling from becoming your complete identity. When you say, "I am angry," the mind may treat anger as the whole truth of who you are in that moment. When you say, "Anger is present," you remember that anger is one experience among many. There is also breathing, there is hearing, there is the body sitting or standing, there is awareness noticing everything. The anger is present, but it is not the entire mind. This shift matters because painful thoughts gain power when you become completely identified with them. A thought says, "You were humiliated," and within seconds, you are no longer observing a memory. You are back inside the humiliation. You feel small, exposed, and powerless again. Mindfulness helps you remain in the present while recognizing what the mind is producing. You can say, "The mind is showing an old scene." This reminds you that you are seeing a mental event now. The event being remembered belongs to the past, even though the feelings arising in the body are happening in the present. You do not have to attack the scene. You also do not have to enter it. Think of a visitor passing the window of your home. You may notice the person without opening the door and inviting them to stay. In the same way, a thought can be seen without being welcomed into a long conversation. The problem is that people often believe there are only two choices. Either they follow the thought or they force it away. Buddhist awareness reveals a third possibility. Let the thought be present without serving it. You do not suppress it. You do not entertain it. You simply notice it. This can feel unfamiliar because the mind is used to responding. When fear appears, you search for safety. When anger appears, you search for someone to blame. When regret appears, you search for a different past. To observe without reacting may initially feel passive, but it is not passivity. It is restraint guided by understanding. You are choosing not to turn one thought into 20. Suppose the thought says, "They never respected you." If you feed it, you may begin listing every moment of disrespect. You remember their words, their expressions, and the people who failed to defend you. Soon, anger fills the body. If you attack it, you may say, "Stop being weak. Forget them. You should not care." Now shame joins the anger. But if you observe it, you may say, "A painful belief about respect is here." Then you breathe and notice how the thought feels without adding another story. The thought may remain for a while. This does not mean observation is failing. The goal is not immediate disappearance. This is important because many people turn mindfulness into another method of control. They observe a thought for 10 seconds and then become frustrated when it does not leave. Secretly, they are still saying, "I am noticing you so that you will disappear." That is resistance wearing peaceful clothing. True observation does not demand a quick result. It allows the thought to follow its natural course. Some thoughts fade quickly, others stay longer because the emotion is strong, the wound is recent, or the mind is tired. You do not judge the practice by how fast the thought leaves. You judge it by whether you continue feeding the struggle. A storm does not become a failure because it lasts longer than you hoped. It passes according to conditions. Your task is not to shout at the clouds. Your task is to avoid building your home in the rain. The mind often fears that allowing a thought to exist will make it stronger. You may think, "If I let this anger be here, I will become an angry person." Or, "If I allow this fear, it will take over." But allowing is not obeying. You can allow anger to be felt without sending the cruel message anger wants you to send. You can allow fear to move through the body without canceling every meaningful plan. You can allow sadness without deciding that life will always feel empty. Emotions are visitors. Actions are choices. A feeling may arrive without your permission, but behavior still belongs to your responsibility. This is why Buddhist practice does not ask you to become emotionless. It asks you to develop enough awareness that emotion does not immediately become action. Anger may say, attack. Awareness says, anger is asking for action. Let me pause. Fear may say, run. Awareness says, fear is present. Is there actual danger? Shame may say, hide. Awareness says, shame is here. What truth does this moment require? The pause breaks emotional obedience. Without awareness, a thought enters and becomes a command. With awareness, the thought becomes information that can be examined. Some information will be useful. Anger may reveal that a boundary has been crossed. Fear may reveal a real risk. Sadness may reveal a loss that needs care. But the emotion's first demand is not always its wisest message. Anger may point toward a boundary, yet demand revenge. Fear may point toward preparation, yet demand total avoidance. Sadness may point toward rest and support, yet claim that nothing will improve. Mindfulness helps you receive the signal without blindly following the demand. This is different from pushing the emotion away. Suppression says, you must not be here. Awareness says, I see you, but you will not make every decision. There is dignity in this response. You are neither controlled by the feeling nor frightened by its existence. Resistance often grows from the belief that certain thoughts should never appear in a good or peaceful person. You may judge yourself for anger, jealousy, resentment, fear, or painful memories. You think that spiritual growth should remove these experiences completely. Then their appearance feels like personal failure. But a peaceful mind is not a mind in which nothing difficult ever arises. It is a mind that knows how to meet difficulty without creating unnecessary conflict. Even a well-kept garden receives weeds. The gardener does not scream at the soil. The gardener notices what has grown and responds carefully. In the same way, your mind has been shaped by years of experiences, habits, fears, relationships, and beliefs. Thoughts will arise from those conditions. You do not need to treat each one as a moral judgment. A jealous thought does not make you a jealous person. A cruel image does not mean you want to act cruelly. A fearful thought does not prove weakness. The appearance of mental content is not the same as the choice to support it. This understanding can remove a great amount of shame. Many people suffer not only because of what they think, but because of what they believe the thought says about them. They experience anger and conclude that they are bad. They remember someone they wanted to forget and conclude that they have made no progress. But progress is not measured by whether a memory ever appears again. Progress may be seen in how you respond when it appears. Perhaps 6 months ago, one memory destroyed your whole day. Now it disturbs you for 10 minutes. Perhaps you once sent messages whenever anger rose. Now you wait until your mind becomes clear. Perhaps you still feel fear, but you no longer abandon every opportunity because of it. The thought may look the same, but your relationship with it has changed. This is freedom developing quietly. You may not notice it because the mind focuses on the fact that the thought returned. It ignores the fact that you no longer followed it as far. Do not demand perfection from a process built through practice. The mind learned resistance over many years. It may have been taught that pain should be hidden, anger should be denied, and fear should be conquered through force. You may have heard phrases such as, just stop thinking about it, be strong, or get over it. These words may have taught you to treat your own mind as an enemy. Yet the mind often needs understanding more than violence. When a frightened child cries, shouting at the child to stop may create more fear. The crying may become louder because the child now faces both the original fear and the anger of the adult. Your inner experience can respond in a similar way. A painful thought arises, and then you attack yourself for having it. The thought now carries the additional message that you are unsafe even with yourself. Mindfulness offers an inner environment where experience can be seen without punishment. You may quietly say, "This is difficult, and it is allowed to be difficult." That sentence does not make the problem permanent. It removes the demand that you feel differently before you are ready. Acceptance makes room for change, because energy is no longer being wasted on denial. Consider the effort required to hold a beach ball beneath water. As long as you keep pushing, the body must remain tense. The moment your grip weakens, the ball rises quickly. Thought suppression can work in the same way. You may hold a memory down during the day through constant activity. You stay busy, avoid silence, and fill every empty moment with noise. At night, when your control becomes tired, the memory returns with force. Its return may not mean the memory has become stronger. It may mean you never allowed it to move naturally through awareness. This does not mean you should spend hours drowning in painful memories. There is a difference between allowing and flooding. Allowing means giving the experience enough space to be recognized while remaining connected to the present. Flooding means losing contact with the present and becoming overwhelmed by the past. If a thought feels too intense, ground yourself. Notice 5 things you can see. Feel the support beneath your body. Slow your breathing without forcing it. Remind yourself of where you are and what day it is. You can say, "This is a memory. It is not happening now." Grounding is not rejection. It is a way of staying safe while the mind processes what has arisen. You may also choose when to give deeper attention to painful material. Not every moment is suitable. If you are working, driving, or caring for someone, you may say, "I notice this, but I will return to it when I have privacy and stability." This is not suppression if you genuinely return when the time is right. It is wise timing. The mind can learn that its pain will be heard without being allowed to interrupt every responsibility. Later, you may sit quietly and notice what is present. Instead of retelling the entire event, begin with the body. Where do you feel the emotion? Is there tightness in the throat, pressure in the chest, heat in the face, restlessness in the stomach? Stay with the sensation as sensation. The mind may quickly attach words. "This is because of what they did. They never cared. I should have known." Notice the story and return gently to the body. This helps you experience the emotion without constantly rebuilding its cause. A feeling in the body changes from moment to moment. Tightness may move, heat may cool, pressure may rise and fall. When you watch closely, you discover that emotion is not one solid object. It is a changing process. Buddhist teaching places great importance on impermanence. Everything arising from conditions changes when conditions change. A thought appears, remains, and passes. An emotion rises, reaches a certain strength, and eventually transforms. Resistance often hides this natural movement because you become focused on making the emotion leave. You stop noticing that it is already changing. You say, "This anger will never end," but the anger is not exactly the same from one minute to the next. There may be moments of heat, moments of sadness, moments of tiredness, and moments of quiet. The label anger can make the experience seem more fixed than it is. Observe closely, and you may discover many smaller parts. There may be disappointment, fear, wounded pride, and the desire for fairness. Each part has its own movement. You do not need to solve all of them at once. Let each experience be known as it arises. Heat is present. Sadness is present. The wish to be respected is present. An urge to send a message is present. This language creates precision without beginning another story. The urge is especially important to notice. Thoughts often produce urges, and urges can feel like commands. You feel the need to check someone's page, reread old messages, defend yourself, or ask for reassurance. Instead of acting immediately, recognize an urge to check is present. Then wait. An urge usually rises like a wave. If you do not obey at once, it may become stronger for a moment, then begin to fall. You discover that the urge was powerful, but temporary. You are not required to act at the highest point of every emotional wave. This is how observation protects conduct. You may fear that refusing the urge means avoiding a real issue. Ask whether the action remains wise after the emotion settles. If the message still needs to be sent tomorrow, you can send it with greater clarity. If the concern is real, it will still deserve attention when your body is calm. What disappears after the emotional wave may never have required action. Resisting a thought can also strengthen it because resistance gives it importance. The mind pays close attention to anything treated as a threat. When you react to a thought with panic, you teach the mind, "This thought is dangerous. Watch for it." The mind then becomes more likely to notice it. This is especially common with thoughts that frighten you because they feel unusual or unwanted. You may wonder why such a thought appeared and what it says about you. You begin checking whether it will return. The checking creates a cycle. A thought appears. You become frightened. You search for its meaning. You watch for it. Because you are watching, you notice it again. Its return seems to confirm that it is important. The cycle continues not because the thought is true, but because attention keeps it active. Mindfulness interrupts the cycle by reducing the alarm. You can say, "A strange thought appeared," then leave it there. You do not need to understand every random image or sentence produced by the mind. The mind combines memories, fears, words, and possibilities. Much of this content has no deeper purpose. Treating every thought as a hidden revelation gives ordinary mental noise unnecessary power. This does not mean ignoring thoughts connected to real danger, responsibility, or health. Wisdom examines context, but not every disturbing thought is a warning. Sometimes a thought is only a thought. The sentence may sound simple, yet living it requires practice. You have been trained to believe that thinking something means believing it, wanting it, or predicting it, but thought and intention are different. A person can think, "I may fail," while intending to continue. A person can remember cruelty without wanting revenge. A person can feel afraid while choosing courage. Your actions reveal the direction you support. The mind can speak in many voices. You are not required to turn every voice into your leader. Resistance may also appear through distraction. You immediately reach for your phone, food, noise, work, or conversation whenever discomfort appears. Temporary distraction can be useful, especially when you need a break, but constant escape teaches the mind that the feeling cannot be tolerated. Then, the feeling becomes more frightening each time it returns. You begin fearing not only the thought, but any quiet moment in which it might appear. Your life becomes organized around avoidance. You stay busy beyond exhaustion. You avoid places, songs, topics, and people that remind you of the past. The world becomes smaller because too many doors lead toward thoughts you do not want. Gentle exposure to inner experience can begin reversing this pattern. You sit quietly for a short period and allow whatever appears to be noticed. Perhaps only 2 minutes at first. You keep your attention anchored in breathing or physical sensation. When a thought comes, label it lightly. Planning, remembering, judging, or worrying. Then return to the anchor. The label should not become another analysis. You are not asking why the thought appeared or whether it will return. You are simply recognizing its type. This teaches you that thoughts can come and go without controlling the whole period of silence. Over time, quietness becomes less threatening. You learn that you can feel discomfort without being destroyed by it. The thought may be unpleasant, but you remain present. The body may become tense, but it can also relax again. Confidence grows from direct experience, not from forcing yourself to believe you are strong. Each time you allow a thought without obeying or attacking it, you discover that you are larger than the thought. There is awareness before it, during it, and after it. The thought changes. Awareness remains capable of knowing the change. This does not mean awareness is cold or distant. It can be deeply compassionate. It can say, "I see that pain is here," with the same gentleness you would offer someone you love. Self-compassion is important because resistance often carries cruelty. You may believe harshness will push you toward healing faster, but healing under threat often becomes concealment. You learn to hide the feeling from yourself rather than understand it. A compassionate response creates honesty. You can admit, "I still miss them," without returning to them. You can admit, "I am angry," without hurting anyone. You can admit, "I am afraid," without surrendering your future. The truth of a feeling does not require the action it suggests. This is one of the strongest forms of inner maturity. People often fear that acceptance will make them weak, passive, or trapped. But resistance can keep you trapped more effectively than acceptance. When you are constantly fighting a thought, the thought determines where your attention goes. Acceptance returns choice. You see what is present, decide whether any action is needed, and continue living. The thought may walk beside you for a time, but it no longer chooses the direction. There will be days when this practice feels easier. There will also be days when tiredness, stress, loneliness, or new pain makes thoughts more difficult to observe. Do not turn these changes into a judgment of your progress. Conditions affect the mind. A calm response after good sleep may become harder after several difficult nights. That does not erase what you have learned. It means the mind and body need care. Sometimes the wisest response to repetitive thoughts is not more mental work. It is rest, food, movement, sunlight, connection, or professional support. Mindfulness does not ask you to ignore human needs. A tired body can make the mind louder. A lonely mind may cling more strongly to old relationships. An overwhelmed person may have less space between thought and reaction. Care for the conditions that support awareness. You may also need help when thoughts become overwhelming, frightening, or difficult to manage alone. Asking for support is not failure. Buddhist practice values wise companionship because the mind does not always see itself clearly. A trusted person can help you recognize when observation has become rumination, when acceptance has become tolerance of harm, or when a painful pattern needs deeper care. Inner work does not have to become isolation. The purpose is freedom, not proving that you can carry everything alone. As observation deepens, you begin recognizing the stages through which suffering grows. First, a thought appears. Then the mind judges it. Then it creates a story. Then the body reacts to the story. Then an urge appears. Then the urge becomes action. You may not stop the first thought, but you can interrupt what follows. A memory appears. You notice it. You do not call yourself weak. You do not rebuild the whole story. You feel the body. You wait before acting. The chain becomes shorter. This is how suffering loses fuel. The thought may still visit, but it no longer brings an entire army behind it. Eventually, you may notice that what you resisted for months was not as powerful as you feared. Much of its strength came from the struggle around it. Once the struggle decreased, the thought became more ordinary. It was painful, but it was not permanent. It was uncomfortable, but it was not a command. It was present, but it was not you. This understanding changes the way you meet everything inside the mind. You stop demanding perfect silence before allowing yourself peace. You discover that peace can exist even while a thought is passing through. Peace is not always the absence of noise. Sometimes it is the absence of conflict with the noise. A bird may call outside, a vehicle may pass, a memory may arise. Awareness can hold these experiences without needing them to disappear. The mind becomes spacious. You no longer push every unwanted visitor toward the door. You also do not prepare a room for each one. You let them pass through the open field of awareness. The person who hurt you may appear in memory. You notice the face, the words, or the feeling. Then you return to what is here. No attack, no invitation, no performance, just recognition and return. Each return teaches the mind that the present is still available. The old thought does not need to be destroyed. It only needs to stop receiving the resistance and attention that made it central. And when you no longer waste your strength fighting every thought, a practical question begins to emerge. Some problems truly require action, while others require acceptance. The mind becomes restless when it cannot tell the difference. It may keep thinking because you have not yet decided what belongs to your responsibility and what must be left outside your control. And this is where the mind reaches another turning point. Once you stop fighting every thought, you can finally ask a more useful question. Does this problem require something from me, or am I carrying parts of it that do not belong to my control? Many problems remain alive because responsibility has never been clearly chosen. The mind keeps circling because it does not know whether to act, wait, speak, leave, forgive, prepare, or accept. It moves between fear and hope, creating many possible responses but committing to none. This uncertainty keeps the problem open. You may think you need more time to understand everything, but sometimes you already understand enough. What you have not done is decide what part belongs to you. A situation can contain many people, choices, emotions, and consequences. If you try to carry the entire situation, the burden becomes unbearable. You begin taking responsibility for another person's behavior, their understanding, their healing, their decisions, and the outcome of everything. No human being has that much control. Buddhist wisdom does not teach helplessness. It teaches wise effort. Wise effort means using your energy where it can create change and refusing to waste it where no amount of force can guarantee the result. This requires honesty. Sometimes the problem remains because you have avoided a necessary action. Perhaps you need to make a phone call, admit a mistake, end an unhealthy pattern, ask for help, or make a decision you have delayed. The mind continues thinking because action has not yet taken its place. You may call it overthinking, but part of the restlessness may be unfinished responsibility. Suppose you hurt someone with careless words. You know the conversation ended badly, and you have spent days wondering whether they are angry. You replay what happened, explain your intentions to yourself, and hope the discomfort will disappear. Yet the part that belongs to you may be simple. Offer an honest apology. Until you act, the mind may continue returning because something remains incomplete. The solution is not another hour of analysis. It is responsibility expressed through conduct. A sincere apology does not begin with defending yourself. It does not say, "I am sorry you felt hurt," as though the other person's feelings were the entire problem. It recognizes the behavior. You might say, "What I said was disrespectful. I understand that it caused pain. I am sorry, and I will be more careful." Then you allow the other person to respond as they choose. Your responsibility is to acknowledge, repair where possible, and change your conduct. Their responsibility is to decide whether they need time, distance, conversation, or forgiveness. You cannot control their response by apologizing perfectly. This is where many people become trapped. They accept their part, but then continue carrying the other person's part. They apologize and expect immediate relief. If the person remains hurt, they become restless again. They say, "I apologized. What else do they want?" But an apology does not purchase a particular reaction. It is an act of responsibility, not a tool for controlling the outcome. Once you have acted sincerely, you must allow the other person their process. You may need to answer questions or repair practical harm, but you cannot demand that another person recover according to your preferred schedule. Their healing is outside your control. The same principle applies when someone has harmed you. Your responsibility may be to speak clearly, set a boundary, seek support, leave danger, or stop participating in a destructive pattern. Their responsibility is to examine their behavior and choose whether to change. You cannot perform both roles. Many people spend years trying to make someone else take responsibility. They explain, plead, threaten, forgive, return, and explain again. They believe that if they find the right words, the person will finally become accountable. But accountability cannot be forced from the outside. You can create consequences. You can remove access. You can tell the truth. You can refuse to continue. But the inner decision to change must come from the person. Your responsibility is not to create their awakening. It is to stop abandoning your own well-being while waiting for it. This may require a boundary. A boundary is often necessary when a problem repeats because the conditions allowing it have not changed. Perhaps someone insults you during every disagreement. Perhaps they borrow money and avoid repayment. Perhaps they enter your private matters, break promises, or expect your constant availability. You may complain about the pattern, yet continue responding in the same way. The problem survives because your discomfort has not become a decision. A clear boundary turns awareness into action. It says, "If you speak to me with insults, I will end the conversation." It says, "I will not lend more money while the previous amount remains unpaid." It says, "I am not available for calls at all hours." It says, "I will not discuss this private matter." The boundary focuses on your behavior. It does not say, "You must never become angry." You cannot control that. It says, "If the conversation becomes abusive, I will leave." This is something you can actually do. A boundary without action is only a request. If you state the same limit many times but never follow through, the other person learns that your words do not change access. You may then become resentful because they continue. Yet, part of your responsibility is to enforce what you have stated. This does not mean becoming harsh. You can follow through calmly. You do not need to make a dramatic speech each time. The purpose is not to punish them. It is to stop participating in what you already know is harmful. Wise effort is often quiet. It may look like ending the call, leaving the room, refusing the request, or changing how much information you share. The action may be small, but its clarity can change the entire pattern. Some problems survive because you want the comfort of change without the discomfort of action. You may know a decision is needed, but each choice carries a loss. Leaving a relationship may bring loneliness. Changing a habit may remove familiar comfort. Saying no may disappoint someone. Asking for help may expose vulnerability. So the mind keeps thinking. Thinking creates the feeling that you are working on the problem without requiring you to face the cost of a decision. You consider every possibility again and again. You wait for a choice that contains no pain. But some important decisions do not offer a painless path. They ask you to choose which difficulty leads toward greater integrity. Remaining where you are may hurt. Changing may also hurt. The question is not always, which choice feels comfortable now? It may be, which choice reduces unnecessary suffering over time? Buddhist wisdom recognizes that discomfort and suffering are not exactly the same. A wise action can be uncomfortable while preventing deeper suffering. A harmful habit can feel comfortable while creating long-term pain. Telling the truth may be uncomfortable. Continuing a lie creates greater suffering. Setting a boundary may feel uncomfortable. Allowing repeated disrespect creates deeper suffering. Seeking help may feel uncomfortable. Remaining alone with an overwhelming problem may create more harm. Wise effort is willing to experience necessary discomfort. This does not mean rushing into every difficult action. Sometimes patience is the correct responsibility. A situation may need more information, emotions may need to settle, timing may matter, but patience is different from avoidance. Patience remains awake. It knows what it is waiting for. Avoidance waits without purpose and hopes the problem will disappear. If you are delaying a decision, ask, what specific information am I waiting to receive? If there is a clear answer, waiting may be wise. If you cannot name anything, you may be postponing discomfort. The mind often says, I am not ready, when it means, I do not want to feel what this decision will bring. You may never feel completely ready. Readiness sometimes arrives after the first step, not before it. Your responsibility may be smaller than the whole decision. Perhaps you do not need to solve the entire future today. You may only need to gather information, speak to someone trustworthy, make an appointment, or write down your options. A large problem becomes more manageable when responsibility is reduced to the next honest action. The mind becomes overwhelmed when it tries to carry the final outcome. It asks, what if everything goes wrong? But your actual responsibility may only be what you do today. You do not control every consequence. You control the quality of the next step. This is a central part of wise effort. You act with care without demanding complete control. A farmer can prepare the soil, plant seeds, remove weeds, and provide water, but the farmer cannot command rain, sunlight, or the exact speed of growth. The farmer is responsible for effort, not absolute outcome. Your life works in a similar way. You may prepare carefully for an examination and still face difficult questions. You may work honestly and still experience rejection. You may care for your health and still become ill. You may love someone sincerely and still lose the relationship. Effort matters, but effort is not a guarantee. When you confuse responsibility with guarantee, every uncertain outcome becomes a personal failure. You tell yourself that if something went wrong, you must not have tried hard enough. This belief creates unnecessary guilt. Sometimes you did everything reasonable, and life still moved in a painful direction. Acceptance begins where your influence ends. This is not a weak statement. It protects the mind from carrying impossible responsibility. Ask yourself, what could I genuinely influence in this situation? Perhaps you could speak honestly. You could not control whether they believed you. Perhaps you could apply for the opportunity. You could not control who was selected. Perhaps you could offer care. You could not force the person to receive it. Perhaps you could follow medical advice. You could not command the body to respond in a particular way. Perhaps you could prepare for change. You could not remove every uncertainty. When you identify the line between influence and control, the mind becomes clearer. Influence means your action may affect the situation. Control means you can guarantee the result. In many important areas of life, you have influence, but not control. You can influence a conversation through calm speech, but you cannot control the other person's honesty. You can influence your finances through planning, but you cannot control every unexpected expense. You can influence your health through habits, but you cannot control every condition. You can influence a relationship through care, but you cannot control whether someone remains loyal. Peace grows when you stop demanding control where only influence exists. This does not remove disappointment. It prevents disappointment from becoming self-condemnation. You can say, I acted according to what I knew, and the outcome was not what I hoped. Both parts can be true. Some problems survive because guilt has become confused with responsibility. Guilt can be useful when it points toward harm you caused. It can motivate apology, repair, and change. But guilt becomes harmful when it continues after responsibility has been fulfilled. You may apologize, correct the behavior, and make amends, yet continue punishing yourself for years. You believe ongoing pain proves that you understand the seriousness of what happened, but self-punishment does not repair the past. Once the lesson has entered your conduct, endless guilt adds no value. It may even keep you focused on your own suffering instead of the needs of the person you harmed. Responsibility asks, what repair is possible? Guilt asks, how long must I continue feeling terrible? The first can serve healing. The second can become attachment to a damaged identity. You are allowed to change after making a mistake. Buddhist teaching does not describe the self as fixed. Your habits, understanding, and conduct can develop. You are influenced by the past, but you are not required to repeat it. If you have truly changed, continuing to define yourself by one action may deny the reality of that growth. Take responsibility without building a permanent home inside shame. There are also situations in which you feel guilty for things that were never your responsibility. Perhaps someone is disappointed because you chose a different path. Perhaps a family member is angry because you cannot meet every demand. Perhaps a friend feels abandoned because you stopped rescuing them. Their pain may be real, but real pain does not automatically mean you have done something wrong. People can feel hurt when a healthy pattern replaces an unhealthy one. A person who depended on your lack of boundaries may suffer when access changes. You may feel guilty because their discomfort is visible, but the existence of discomfort does not prove the old arrangement was right. Ask, did I act without care, or did I simply stop carrying what was never mine? This question can separate compassion from false responsibility. You can care that someone is disappointed without reversing a necessary decision. You can understand their feelings without making those feelings the ruler of your life. Responsibility does not require you to prevent every person from experiencing pain. That would be impossible. Sometimes telling the truth causes pain. Ending a harmful relationship causes pain. Refusing an unreasonable request causes pain. Allowing someone to face the consequences of their choices may cause pain. The question is whether you are causing unnecessary harm or allowing necessary reality to be felt. This distinction requires wisdom because the mind may use it to justify cruelty. You cannot simply say, their pain is not my responsibility, after acting carelessly. Examine your conduct honestly. Did you communicate clearly? Did you act with unnecessary anger? Did you humiliate them? Did you make promises you did not keep? Did you use silence to punish? If so, take responsibility for those actions. But do not take responsibility for the fact that they dislike a truth you delivered with reasonable care. You are responsible for your conduct, not for controlling every emotion your conduct awakens. Some problems survive because no one has named who is responsible for what. In families, friendships, workplaces, and relationships, duties can become confused. One person becomes the rescuer. Another becomes the one who is constantly rescued. One person plans, pays, reminds, apologizes, and solves. The other avoids consequences. Over time, the responsible person becomes exhausted and resentful. They ask, why does this person never change? But change may be delayed because someone else keeps absorbing the result of their choices. When you constantly remove consequences, you may unintentionally protect the pattern. You pay every debt, explain every absence, complete every unfinished task, or calm every conflict. The person does not experience the full weight of their behavior. Helping has become over-functioning. Buddhist compassion does not always mean making life easier for someone. Sometimes compassion means allowing them to meet reality. This can feel cruel when you are used to rescuing. You may fear that stepping back means you do not care, but there is a difference between support and replacement. Support says, "I will stand beside you while you take the necessary steps." Replacement says, "I will take the steps for you so that you do not have to change." The first can strengthen. The second can deepen dependence. Ask what responsibility belongs to the other person. Can they make the call? Can they apologize? Can they search for work? Can they attend the appointment? Can they manage the result of their choice? Do not steal another adult's responsibility in the name of love. You may help when they are genuinely unable, but inability and unwillingness are not the same. A person may say, "I cannot," when they mean, "I do not want to experience the discomfort." If you always remove the discomfort, they never discover what they are capable of doing. Your help should not require the destruction of your peace. This does not mean relationships should be perfectly equal in every moment. There are times when one person carries more because the other is ill, grieving, struggling, or overwhelmed. Compassion allows imbalance during genuine need, but temporary support should not silently become a permanent identity. You are not required to become the solution to every problem someone refuses to address. Your responsibility may be to have an honest conversation about the pattern. Speak about what you can offer and what you can no longer continue. You might say, "I care about you, but I cannot keep solving this every time." Or, "I can help you plan, but I cannot do the task for you." Or, "I can support you emotionally, but I cannot continue paying for this choice." Clear language prevents resentment from growing in silence. Resentment often appears when you say yes outwardly while saying no inwardly. You agree, help, and remain available, but part of you feels used. You expect the other person to notice your sacrifice without being told. When they do not, anger grows. This problem may survive because you have not taken responsibility for your own yes. You may blame others for asking, but you are also responsible for answering honestly. People cannot always know that your agreement is hiding resentment. If you say yes, they may believe you are willing. Learning to say no is part of choosing responsibility. A clear no can be kinder than a dishonest yes. The dishonest yes creates expectation, resentment, and eventual conflict. The clear no may disappoint someone, but it tells the truth early. You do not need to provide a long defense. Excessive explanation can turn a boundary into a negotiation. You may say, "I am not able to do that." This can be complete. The mind may fear judgment. It predicts that the person will call you selfish, unhelpful, or difficult. Perhaps they will. Their opinion is outside your control. Your responsibility is to decide whether the request fits your values, capacity, and obligations. A life without no becomes a life shaped entirely by other people's priorities. Choosing responsibility means recognizing that your time and energy are also responsibilities. You must decide where they go. If you give them everywhere, you may have nothing left for what matters most. This is not selfishness, it is stewardship of your life. Buddhist practice values intention, but intention must be joined with wisdom. You may intend to help everyone, yet create exhaustion, dependence, and neglect of your own duties. Good intentions do not make every action wise. Ask whether your help reduces suffering in a healthy way or delays a responsibility that needs to be faced. The answer may be different in each situation. Sometimes help is the wise action. Sometimes refusal is wiser. Sometimes you need more information. Sometimes the problem is beyond what you can manage, and the responsible step is to seek professional support. Seeking help is another form of wise responsibility. Many people keep problems alive because they believe asking for help means weakness. They hide financial trouble, emotional pain, illness, conflict, or confusion. They try to solve everything alone until the problem becomes larger. Pride can disguise itself as independence. True responsibility does not ask, "Can I prove that I need nobody?" It asks, what action gives this situation the best chance of improving? Sometimes that action is reaching beyond your own knowledge. You may need medical care, legal advice, counseling, community support, spiritual guidance, or practical assistance. You do not become less responsible by seeking qualified help. You become more responsible by recognizing your limits. The mind may say, "I should be able to handle this." But the word "should" can prevent useful action. No person knows everything. No person remains strong in every season. A wise person knows when a burden requires more hands. This is different from giving away all responsibility. Help should support your action, not replace your participation where participation is possible. You still attend, listen, choose, practice, and follow through. The expert cannot make every decision for you. A counselor cannot set your boundary outside the room. A doctor cannot follow the plan for you. A teacher cannot study on your behalf. Support creates direction. You still walk. Some problems survive because the action required is a change of habit. You may continue blaming circumstances while repeating a behavior that strengthens the problem. You want a calmer mind, but spend every quiet moment consuming upsetting content. You want financial stability, but avoid looking at your spending. You want stronger relationships, but refuse difficult conversations. You want energy, but ignore rest. The problem may not need more understanding. It may need repetition of a different behavior. Habits create conditions. Buddhist teaching often focuses on causes and conditions because suffering does not appear from nothing. If certain actions repeatedly create agitation, you must examine those actions. You cannot plant the conditions for chaos each day and expect the mind to produce peace at night. Ask which habit is feeding the problem. Perhaps you repeatedly check on someone who has left. Each check renews attachment. Perhaps you argue online every evening. Each argument keeps the mind alert. Perhaps you delay important tasks. Each delay increases fear. Responsibility means changing the condition you can change. Do not try to change everything at once. Choose one clear habit. You may decide not to check the person's page for one day. You may place your phone outside the bedroom. You may review your finances once each week. You may speak honestly instead of agreeing automatically. Small actions can reveal where your power truly exists. The mind often ignores small responsibilities because it is fascinated by large outcomes. It wants complete healing, total certainty, perfect peace, or immediate change. But large outcomes are often built through ordinary acts. One honest conversation, one completed task, one boundary followed, one request for help, one changed habit. These actions may not feel dramatic, but they stop the problem from being fed in the same way. Progress becomes visible through conduct. There are also problems that do not require action because every reasonable action has already been taken. You have explained, prepared, apologized, asked for help, or created distance. Nothing else remains within your influence. The mind may continue because acceptance feels like giving up. But acceptance is not the refusal to act. It is what becomes necessary after wise action reaches its limit. Suppose you applied for an opportunity and must now wait. Repeatedly checking will not change the decision. Your responsibility was to submit the strongest application you could. The response belongs to others. Suppose you apologized sincerely, but the person refuses contact. Your responsibility was to acknowledge and repair where possible. Their decision belongs to them. Suppose you supported someone through a crisis, but they continue rejecting every available step. You cannot force them to choose differently. At this point, more effort may not be wisdom, it may be attachment to control. Letting go does not mean you stop caring, it means care no longer demands impossible power. You may still hope, you may still feel sadness, but you stop carrying the result as though your tension could change it. Acceptance says, "I have done what belongs to me." This sentence can bring relief, but only when it is honest. Do not use it before taking the action you know is necessary, otherwise acceptance becomes avoidance. Ask carefully, have I truly done what belongs to me, or am I using surrender to escape discomfort? Wise acceptance comes after wise effort, not instead of it. There are situations where action is impossible in the present. You may need to wait for a date, a response, healing, or circumstances to change. Your responsibility then is not to control the waiting period. It is to decide how you will live inside it. You can care for your body, maintain your responsibilities, seek support, and return attention to the present. Waiting does not have to become full-time suffering. You may say, the answer is not available today. Then allow today to contain other things. The mind may return to the uncertainty many times. Each time remind it that no new action is possible now. This is not laziness, it is respect for reality. Some people believe constant worry keeps them connected to what matters. A parent worries about a child and feels that relaxing would mean not caring. A person waiting for medical results feels guilty for laughing. Someone grieving feels disloyal when a peaceful moment appears. But suffering is not proof of love. You do not help another person by destroying every calm moment within yourself. You can remain caring and responsible without carrying permanent tension. Your peace does not betray those you love. In fact, a steadier mind may help you respond more wisely when action becomes possible. When you carry the entire situation, you exhaust the energy needed for your actual part. You become tired from predicting, controlling, and worrying. Then when a useful action appears, you have little strength left. Release protects your ability to respond. This is why choosing responsibility is not only about doing more. Sometimes it means doing less of what never belonged to you. Less monitoring, less persuading, less rescuing, less explaining, less waiting for permission. Then more energy becomes available for honest action. You may need to create a simple division on paper. Write what belongs to me and what does not belong to me. Under what belongs to you, write specific actions. Speak honestly, attend the appointment, follow the plan, apologize, save money, leave the harmful setting, ask for support. Under what does not belong to you, write outcomes and other people's choices, whether they forgive, whether they change, whether they approve, whether the result arrives exactly as hoped. This simple practice can reveal how much of your suffering comes from carrying the second list. The first list may be difficult, but it is workable. The second list is impossible to control. Return to the first list whenever the mind becomes scattered. Ask, what is mine now? Not next month, not after everyone changes, now. Perhaps what belongs to you is to rest before making a decision. Perhaps it is to send the message. Perhaps it is to stop sending messages. Perhaps it is to tell the truth to someone you trust. The answer does not need to solve the whole problem. It only needs to honor your present responsibility. Once the action is complete, stop demanding that thought continue working. The mind may say, what else can I do? Sometimes the answer is, nothing useful right now. Learning to accept this answer is a form of strength. A restless mind believes there must always be another action. A wise mind knows when effort has reached its boundary. This boundary protects you from turning care into control. It also protects you from turning responsibility into punishment. You are not responsible for preventing every loss, correcting every misunderstanding, or saving every relationship. You are responsible for how you meet life with the understanding and ability available to you. You will sometimes make the wrong choice. You will act too soon or wait too long. You will say too much or remain silent when you should speak. Responsibility includes learning from these moments without demanding perfect judgment from yourself. Wisdom develops through experience. The goal is not to make a flawless decision every time. It is to become more honest about what you can influence, more willing to act where action is needed, and more able to release what no longer belongs in your hands. This balance creates peace. Action without acceptance becomes control. Acceptance without action becomes passivity. Wise effort stands between them. It asks you to work fully without believing you own the result. It asks you to release fully without pretending you had no part. When you practice this, problems become more clearly shaped. They no longer spread across your entire life. You see the one conversation you need to have, not the 100 reactions you cannot control. You see the one boundary you need to follow, not the entire personality you cannot change. You see the one habit you can begin changing, not the perfect future you cannot create overnight. Clarity reduces the weight. You may still feel afraid. You may still wish for a different outcome, but your mind is no longer carrying every part of the situation at once. You act where your hands can reach. You release what lies beyond them. Then you return to the present. There may be consequences you must face. Face them one at a time. There may be uncertainty you must endure. Endure it without turning it into a prophecy. There may be grief for what cannot be repaired. Let grief be honest without making it responsible for changing the past. This is how responsibility becomes a path toward freedom rather than another burden. You stop asking, how can I control all of this? You begin asking, what is the wisest thing available to me now? That question is smaller, but it is powerful. It returns you to the place where your life can actually be lived. And when you begin acting on what belongs to you while releasing what does not, another hidden pattern becomes easier to see. Some inner arguments were never really attempts to solve a problem. They were attempts to recover the power you felt you lost when someone silenced, dismissed, or humiliated you. The mind kept fighting because it wanted to feel strong again. People and problems stop living in your mind when you stop feeding them with attention, resistance, guilt, and the need for answers. You do not need to erase the past, control every thought, or force others to understand you. You only need to see clearly what belongs to you, act wisely where you can, and release what was never yours to carry. Your mind was not created to become a prison for old words, unfinished arguments, imagined disasters, and other people's confusion. It was meant to be a place of awareness, peace, and freedom. The moment you stop giving every painful thought a room inside you, your life begins returning to the present. Before you leave, write this in the comments. My mind is no longer their home. Let those words become your decision today. And if this message helped you feel lighter, subscribe to the channel for more Buddhist wisdom that brings peace, clarity, and strength into everyday life.